Hi, everybody. It's Susan, and I wanted to come to talk to you finally to pick apart this minor grand trine that we're experiencing and the famous legendary Barbault basket that we'll have in 2026. And all of these grand trines are a bigger theme. They extend for about 5 years, really. And I just want to show you the connection to all of these different years and how we're building over an era as opposed to a specific moment in time. There'll be punctuations and moments in time where things may shift in bigger ways, and then we continue in a new, let's say, a new journey or a new iteration of the journey we're already on. And maybe the first thing I want to say about all of these discussions around the minor grand trines and Barbault's basket and everything is get a grip. Let's get a grip on ourselves and not get carried away by excitement and clickbait that is stimulating people's excitement, but also anxiety. And I'd really like to say, I think I'm just going to say this every time I upload a video now, that astrology can be just the most incredible useful tool, understanding yourself, understanding life stages, understanding how to move in different directions when you have a decision to make. But it shouldn't be something that you feel is a certainty. I'm an astrologer and I know that it's not certain. The astrology is giving us an indication of things. And just like the weather, things can shift, patterns can shift midway. So there's no certainty. There's just this pattern that we can look at and say, oh, that's interesting. It's probably going to develop in this way. It's a tendency. And the more you're looking for certainty, the more anxious you become. And that's the paradox. I'm going to say that again. The more you crave certainty, the more anxious you're going to be. So you want to live with the beauty and the uncertainty of life in such a way that you can say, this is interesting in this moment, and what will I do with this moment? Our destiny is what we do with this moment. So what is happening up until this point is what's brought us here through karma. But our destiny, where we're going forward, is what we're doing with this. How am I choosing to engage in this moment? What do I choose to believe and then act upon based on those beliefs and thoughts that I'm having? Because if we keep getting ourselves hyped up and excited about something, especially things that are in the distant future or things that are happening not in a way we can control, meaning bigger events that we feel are going to impact our lives in ways that we feel out of control, we're just going to make bad decisions because we're anxious and stressed and tired and angry and powerless and all the other things that go with that. So the reason I'm starting this way, and please watch the introduction, there's information in there that you can grow with. Don't just jump to your sign. This is where you'll start to become a more fully engaged, let's say, in your life, as opposed to just listening to what's going to happen to me. I'm trying to get people away from thinking that way with astrology and engaging with the astrology in a way that you feel you're working through your own destiny. You're actually making choices based on what's going on right now and how you want to go forward. So this is the spirit in which I'm offering all of my videos. So please listen to the introductions. And of course, those of you anyway who click on the timestamps, which are always there and always in the description box and always provided for you by chapters with YouTube. I I can't, I'm not even speaking to you. You're probably not even here. So I'm speaking to the converted here. Um, but what I want to point out today in the introduction, and then we'll go sign by sign as I try and parse through the different features, let's say, of this moment in time, which will only include now in July 2026, but I have to go back and forward in time to help you see the bigger context of that. I'm going to try and show you how these patterns keep emerging. These patterns emerge in ways that are shifting us in different directions. And this is a series of patterns that is one of many that correspond to previous patterns that we've had. If you go back to August of 2010, late July, early August of 2010, there was a really spooky T-square. It was a really heavy T-square. Um, in the cardinal signs, and it was including square from, maybe I'll just pull up that chart, see if I can find it, because it's actually worth mentioning. Because that T square I believe is the beginning of what Cory Doctorow calls the enshittification of everything. So I think that summer of 2010 was the beginning of the enshittification of the world that we're living in. And this is certainly it blew up my life, and there was so many changes that happened around that. Let me see if I can find that here. Otherwise, I'll just go back into transits. Um, the reason I bring it up is because it's related to this. Yeah, maybe I didn't put it here. All right, well, let me pull it up in the transits here, and you'll see that if we go back to 2010, then you will have an idea of some of these configurations and how they're speaking to each other. I just want to put like, I think 29 July 2010, but it was kind of around that point. Now, that was the trigger, I guess, so it's a little bit later. Because we want Mars with Saturn, right? Because why not? Mars and Saturn together. Here we go. Mars and Saturn at the very beginning of Libra in opposition, exact opposition, partile, what we call partile when it's in the same degree, partile opposition to Uranus, retrograding with Jupiter, conjoining in a square to Pluto. Uh, there also, as a little aside, is the Neptune and Chiron conjunction that is ongoing around that time, around that phase, at the end of Aquarius. So this was the change, something big shifting here. So new things happening in the Libra and Capricorn dynamic, in the cardinal dynamic, we could say, because we're including the new entry of Uranus going in there. And currently, we're seeing where Uranus and Jupiter are, we're seeing Saturn and Neptune doing the same dance around the same degree. Saturn is finished with these degrees, but Neptune is moving back and forth in these degrees. So why does this matter? And these are the degrees, in fact, of the eclipse of the 18th, 17th of February this year, 2026, and will be also where the nodes shift immediately after the 27th of July, now 2026. And that will be where the eclipses are happening on the 12th of August and the 28th of August with the nodes at these degree points, this particular 29-degree point where Chiron is. So I really do feel that this is tying in a lot of what was already going on in the middle of 2010, which was part of a story that was also the difficult phase of the nodal axis going through the Leo, South Node Leo, and North Node Aquarius axis from the end of 2007 and into 2009. That was this big financial disruption. And we're repeating a pattern in a new way. We're repeating a pattern, but it's a theme. We're riffing on a theme from 16, 18, 19 years ago. So I want you to try and think in terms of where you were, what your life was doing, what was going on. Were you just born? Is this your chart? Perhaps that's true for some of you. I know some of you are young enough, and I'm delighted that some of you very young people are watching me and learning as you're growing through your life, because there's nothing better than to be able to understand yourself with a bigger context for why you're here and what's going on in your life than through astrology. So absolutely brilliant. But it's never too late. I also have many people in their 70s and 80s watching, which is absolutely fabulous too, because this is we're till our last breath, we're learning who we are, right? So then what happens after this 2010 phase, the enshittification begins, and we go through this whole phase from, I think, 2011 till 2012, but the exact squares were 2011 till 2016, I think is the bigger picture. But 2012 till 2015, we had these exact squares with Pluto and Uranus was in Aries, where it is at this point already in 2010. And of course, Pluto was making its very slow and very painful journey through Capricorn, which we've all experienced and emerged from now 3 years ago, or over the course of the last 2 to 3 years, finally from 2024. Now, so all of these things have been shape-shifting and contributing to where we get to in this point. And the hype around this point has kind of taken on a proportion that I think is absolutely unhelpful. Uh, I'm old enough to remember, and many of you are as well, this harmonic convergence of 1987. Do you remember that? That was going to be when world peace began. That was going to be when everybody joined hands in love and light, and everything was going to be better, and it was all going to be great. And I want you to really understand that these are the things that have happened repeatedly through time. And even if we go to 2012, remember the Mayan calendar on December 21st, 2012 came to an end. That was the end of history. If you were around in those days, if you were kind of aware in those days of what was going on, the hype was unreal. It was crazy. It was so again, it gets people so emotional that there's this excitement. It's like you're 5 years old and you're waiting for Santa Claus. The difference is that most of the time Santa Claus comes, it's just not what you think it is. And when you become an adult and you're still waiting for Santa Claus, there's going to be a problem. So we really need to get to this place where we're coming back to look at this and use this information in a helpful, constructive way, as opposed to hyping it in such a way that we are expecting things around us to fix what we need to deal with in our own lives. Right. So that particular rant is over. Now let's go to 2025. We're going to go back in time. And this is where this particular configuration that is now we're calling the Barbault basket started. Where did I get my 2025 chart? There we go. So that was the middle of 2025. Really, it was a journey from June through September that was active. And it was from 0 to 1 degree of Aries, where we had Saturn Neptune meeting for the first time, except not exact. That happened in February 2026. But I mean, those are technicalities. They were very, very tightly conjoined. So that was when this bigger current shift started. And then we had Uranus making its first ingress on the 7th of July into Gemini. And then we had Pluto still working its way into Aquarius, which started originally, I think it was like the 23rd of March, 2023. And then it went back and forth again through 2024. And then finally in November, I think it was the 19th of November, 2024, Pluto moved finally into Aquarius. And so it's still in early days here. It's less than a year into its journey. And therefore, it only really got to that early degree point. Now, where Pluto is right there at that early degree point of Aquarius is relevant too, because that was the connection, that was the grand conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter, which traditionally, before we were aware of the modern outer planets, the trans-Saturnian planets, Pluto and Neptune and Uranus, we used, astrologically speaking, we used Saturn and Jupiter as timing mechanisms for the era that was sort of the prominent era, and that was where Jupiter and Saturn met again on the 21st of December, beautiful, very poetic, on the solstice of 21st December 2020. And that started the 20-year journey that we're in right now, of which part of the bigger shifting is this minor grand trine theme that goes right till 2029 and even continues into 2030, 2031 or 2 even, because if we're generous with the orbs, giving it 2 to 3 or even 5 degree orbs, which is I think still relevant, we're going well into 2033. And that's something to pay attention to as well, because the hype around a lot of this is just about the exact orb of alignment, which is it's like your birthday. It's just your birthday, but it doesn't mean you're still growing through life and experiencing life and moving forward the day after your birthday and then for the subsequent year. So keep that in mind. Now, the minor grand trine of 2025 also had Venus at 4 degrees of Leo. Now, I've chosen the date of 29th of August simply because that was when Uranus and Neptune were in a perfect sextile. But it's still very, very tight with Pluto. Again, even though it's like 20 arc minutes away, 23 arc minutes away, it's still a partile trine, minor grand trine, a bisextile, some people call that, or mini grand trine. You can give it a bunch of different names. Anyway, this is the backbone of what is going on now, which is what we call the Barbault basket. And that Barbault basket is coming from André Barbault, who was a French astrologer who was quite renowned and was, I'm sure you've heard it now from other people. If you've watched my video that I did with S.J. Anderson in March this year, early March, we did a video about these configurations for this year and next year. Do watch that if you haven't seen that, because we talked a lot about more of the geopolitical stuff, which today I'm not going to look at. I will again, though, but just today we're looking at the configurations, and then how we're looking at that sign by sign. But notice that now the basket formation and a lot of the things that are triggering this moment are happening where Venus was last year. And so now here we are, July. So really, we could say mid-July, but the exact opposition that is triggering the basket formation is when Jupiter at 4 degrees 26 arc minutes of Leo is opposite Pluto at the same degree in Aquarius. And then we have 4 degrees of retrograde Neptune. Neptune stations retrograde on the 7th of July. I'm doing this on the 5th. So this is just after the Mars and Uranus conjunction, which was also from 3 to 4 degrees, which is part of this triggering this configuration. And here we have Uranus at 4 degrees. So there's these exact sextiles between Pluto and Neptune, by the way, which happen 13 times. It's going to be the first one was 21st of June. So we had that a month before the basket formation. We had the perfected sextile. But these sextiles come in and out of org over decades because it's a century of going through this journey of sextile between Pluto and Neptune. Their cycle is extremely long, and we're in the sextile phase of the cycle, which if you've been with me for a while, you will have heard me say I attribute to the disinformation, misinformation, marketing, propaganda, and basically illusion, delusion, Hollywood, you name it, kind of phase that we're in, and have been in for the better part of a century, and will continue to be in until this sextile starts to separate out and becomes looser and looser in the 2030s. So we're looking at this for a while yet. 13 more of these exact ones, but it doesn't mean that the energy of it is fading. It just means that the exactitude is only coming in and out and then waning in the next 5, 6 years. There's a trine here that's very important as well. That's the trine between Uranus and Pluto that's part of this configuration. And that trine, it really does speak to flow and ease. And I've spoken about this already last year and again in the annual reports. If you've seen that, if you got your 2026 annual reports, you will have heard me speaking about this. Trines mean a flow of energy. It doesn't mean good things. It's just a flow of energy. And if we consider that the outer planets are disruptors, then what we consider to be good or what we'd like to have happen, it's not necessarily going to happen because it's disrupted. Something is disrupted, and that can be very difficult. And we will see that around us. We will continue to see that for many years to come. So we are in an environment of a lot of change that is going to be very disruptive and very destabilizing before it gets better. So we're going through maybe the dark night of the soul collectively. And this is why I really keep emphasizing the get real part of astrology, where it's really just use this for yourself, for your personal growth, and try and not focus too much on things that you cannot control, but keep coming back to your own mind, using your mind with discernment, calming yourself down. If you feel anxious, it's because you're looking for certainty, and we're living in this human three-dimensional experience where there's no certainty. The only certainty on this level is death. If we're born, we're going to die. That's it. And then some say taxes as well. But unless you're rich, then there's no tax. But if you think on the higher level, I'm going to say higher level, not meaning that there's a hierarchy, but in the sense of a vaster sense of who we are, a spiritual level, and on the infinite level of who we are, on a level of consciousness, then we can see that actually everything's fine. It's all fine. It's all going to be fine because what we're doing here is temporary, and it has this, it's like a school. It's like being here in this playground where we're experimenting, we're creating a bunch of stuff, we're deconstructing a bunch of stuff. We gain money, we lose money. We gain relationships, we lose relationships. We gain weight, we lose weight. It's whatever the thing is. It's not real. It's not who we are. And this is why I keep coming back again and again and again. One of the reasons I resisted coming onto YouTube, now it's been 4 years, but I still have this resistance to being here on YouTube because it's difficult to speak to people when they're not in a place that they are seeing reality or seeing life from a place of a higher mind. And there will be people who continue to see life as this three-dimensional thing that they get anxious about. And I don't want to contribute to that. So I feel very conflicted around that. And yeah, anyway, that's that. And also, while we're on the subject of YouTube, I don't monetize this channel. I don't want to take money from the techno-feudalist sort of company that Google is. I believe in the freedom of action and speech and the dynamic exchange of ideas. And if I take money from Google, that is like saying I agree with them suppressing speech, suppressing ideas, suppressing people. My channel is being suppressed, that's for sure. I've had less than 1,000 subscribers join on in the last almost year, which is crazy. Because my channel was growing and growing and growing until I really started to speak a lot about genocide. And I really started to speak a lot about things that were more challenging and are not supposed to be spoken about in terms of the so-called terms and conditions and what is considered okay in terms of proper dialogue these days. So that's why I don't get monetized. I chose that. Don't feel sorry for me. I didn't get demonetized. But you can help me if you want by buying me a cup of coffee. The links are below, or you can make a donation to me, or you can buy the things that I sell. If I'm doing a course or a webinar, you can do that. I'm going to have more courses coming online in the next couple of weeks, just from on my store, so that can give me a little bit of support as well. And you won't be able to hype this video because, of course, hyping is YouTube's newest way of making more money from you. And you think you're giving money to the creator, but it's actually circulating more money to YouTube. So anyway, that's why there's no financial transaction here. That's why there's no membership and all of the other things that really instigate growth in terms of other channels. I don't read from AI prepared text. I'm speaking extemporaneously each time I come to you. Some people complain that I haven't edited my videos. Too bad. Go away, go somewhere else. If you need to have edited or highly polished videos, go back to those people who read from AI generated text, and there you go. You have what you need. I don't. I won't edit because it just costs me extra time. Anyway, that's an aside, but in the context of where we are right now, very important, because when I've spoken in the past about these trines, that is part of this basket configuration, which is now being completed or triggered by Jupiter as it enters in. You can see the basket here with this unusual formation here of three sextiles, one opposition, two trines, and this multi-layered dynamic, which is very difficult to parse apart. It's something that is very complex, and we even have baked into this a T-square with Saturn, the Moon, and Mercury now retrograde in this phase. I'm not going to go into all those little details. By the end of July, there will be a lunation that I'll come and talk about when we do the full moon story for the Leo Aquarius full moon, the full moon on Pluto. Very big deal as well. And I'll come back and talk about the new moon in Cancer as well. Lots to talk about, but this is too much to keep referring to in these bigger videos. So that you see that there's a lot going on here. And and so one of the reasons also why I delayed doing this video was to try and figure out where's my way into it because there's so much about it. And again, we already spoke geopolitically with S.J. Anderson in March. You can find that on my channel. Go back a few videos. And so I'm not going to cover that here, but I will cover it again because this is part of a geopolitical story. But just briefly, I do believe that this basket configuration is one of the potentials that's going to accelerate our move in a direction of techno-feudalism or control through finance, control through ID, control through money, control through all different systems that are already underway. That may be something that is accelerated in July, August, and especially financial markets are extremely delicate right now. They are coming to a place of irredeemable. The Ponzi scheme is being revealed, whether it be in terms of the monetary system or the value of currencies. The euro has been devalued in an insane amount compared to gold, for example, over the last year since the first of the mini grand trines. The dollar is extremely fragile because again they're just printing it, and it's all becoming just this very precarious situation, which when things explode, because it's not an if, it's a when things explode, the heroic savior will be going into digitized everything. And this is what I see. And I'd love to be able to say, I see a harmonic convergence where we're all going to join hands and everybody's going to be happy ever after. But I don't see that. So we have Pluto in opposition, and opposition is the grit, the tension that is required to create this movement or the dynamism that is otherwise quite passive with trines and sextiles. A trine doesn't create action. It allows for the flow that's already underway. What's underway? Well, we can see what's underway. It's this whole movement in the direction of everything being online, everything being dominated by control that is so granular. And again, if we go back to 2012, 2013, that was when Edward Snowden tried to sound the alarm based on what the NSA was doing to the United States, where ostensibly the NSA was about spying on foreign countries, but in fact it was about spying on Americans. And that Snowden episode, which forced him into exile, forced him to run away, and which threw, let's say, people like Glenn Greenwald and other independent, very powerful voices in media to the fore, really was a trigger. And now that trigger we can see from the enshittification of 2010, and then that whole series of squares, the Uranus and Pluto squares from Aries back to Capricorn, which have perpetuated change over the last 16 years or so, that brought us to this point of, okay, we're here now. What are we going to do about that? So this is the dynamic that we're in right now. What are we going to do about that? I have no idea. I'm just showing you how I'm feeling. This energy is going to be decisive, but I think it's a power struggle that it's not necessarily going to be favorable before it turns favorable. Again, whatever that means. What does good mean? For whom is it good? And that's always the question. People ask in the comments, is this going to be good or bad? There is no good or bad in astrology. It's just the energy is there, and who's using the energy. There's very little that we can see in our world today, which is a genuinely benevolent force. It's just the way it is. And you can want that, and you can meditate for that, and you can hope for that, and it still will not make that true on the level of three dimensions. But we can make that true on our inner experience and then connect with people who want that. But it's still not going to be what is the result that we see in the three-dimensional world. We just have to work with what we can and hope for the best in terms of what we can contribute. But don't expect that the world outside is going to suddenly magically get rid of the forces who are genuinely demonic and genuinely, like our leaders in the West, drug-addled, venal, and absolutely working against the population. We're not going to be able to wish that away. There will have to be an event that shifts things in such a huge way that everything changes, but it will not be comfortable. It will not be pleasant. So, and that is why I keep emphasizing that we need to prepare ourselves interiorly. We need to prepare ourselves psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually to feel strong on the inside, trust life, trust that there's this game that we're participating in. I spoke about it in the last video. In the Indian version of life, there's this concept of Leela. It's just this play. We're just playing this role right now. This particular time around, I'm a woman. I'm talking to you as an astrologer. It's just all a game. It's all a game. You're listening. One time it's going to be you talking to somebody and they're listening to you. It's all a game. It's all changing constantly. None of it is substantive or real. And this is the important thing to look at. Not to be nihilistic and not to say it's all unreal, therefore it doesn't matter. No, on the three-dimensional level, there are consequences, and that karma is part of that. But there is a relative truth, and if we follow the Vedantic or the Buddhist way of looking at life, the relative truth is all of this. And then the absolute truth is another thing. But we can play in the playground of the relative truth and not take it so seriously, knowing that there's an absolute truth that's actually behind all of it. That is the foundation of all of it. So get closer to that point. So we're going to come back to Barbault's basket sign by sign. I'm not going to do any more in terms of interpretation, just to say I do feel that there's going to be some kind of event coming up very quickly. Certainly the collapse of AI, a forecast, I think that's something. There already is such a lot of, the bubble is so huge in the West, and there's going to be a flipping, a dominance of, again, everything is about the dominance shifting. It's not about things necessarily going away. It's about the old model of Western dominance shifting. It's the old model of the false sense of superiority that has been 500 years of the Western story disappearing, shedding, moving on. And there will be, something new coming in. You remember that Who song, Meet the Old Boss, same as, Meet the New Boss, same as the old boss? The song is called Don't Be Fooled Again. Or maybe it's not called that, but anyway, that's the line. Don't be fooled again. So this is maybe where we could look. Oh, I should name this video after that song. I used to love Roger Daltrey. He was a poster on my wall growing up. Anyway, so all of this to say that this is a time of change, but it's not a time of magical change. This is yet another phase of turning the wheel of time. It's another phase of things shifting and moving in a new direction and creating the next thing. So we're moving through this thing and moving into the next thing over a space of many years. If you are familiar with Tibetan Buddhism, there's this way of building mandala called the Kala Chakra. It's the wheel of time. Kala Chakra is the wheel of time. Kala is time and chakra is the wheel. And that they do with sand. They do it with colored sand, or they do it with powdered rice, colored powdered rice. And they spend days ceremoniously creating the framework, the bhupur, and the framework of this thing. And then they fill it in, and then they complete it, and then ceremoniously complete the bindu point, the center of this wheel of time, like the hub, if you like, which disappears into nothing. This is the shunyata. This is the nothingness at the center of the wheel of time. If we think of it in the astrological chart, that's us. That's the center of the natal chart. This is us right here, boom, in the middle. And you're standing there and all of this is happening. And yet all of it is shifting all the time. And then once that has been completed, and this magnificent thing is finished, I'll post some photographs of one from years ago. I'll post it on my channel so you can see a picture if you're not sure what I'm talking about. And then they start to clear it up and they wipe it up and they pull all of the colored sand together. It becomes this one kind of dull gray mass. And they pull it all together and they sweep it into a basket and they take it to the river and they dump it in the river. And the whole message of this ceremony, which is usually about a week long, is that this is the story of life. This is where we are. We're churning, we're turning, we're relating, we're disconnecting, we're growing, we're subsiding, we're born, we die. And this is the color of this moment. This is just this particular color of the mandala of this moment. And then there's another moment. So the mandala gets swept away and another one gets created. But it's all happening all at once. So here, what we're going into as we go forward here, we're going into the next phase. Now, I'm just going to pull up a bunch of these things because I want to be sure I did it as a list so we could go step by step. I think I really need to put my glasses on. Starting to squint when I do these things. Okay, so that was 2026. Now we're looking at 2027. This is the next time that we get this minor grand trine. We'll get another basket as Juno will cross over into this point. I forgot to mention that at this one, Juno is with Pluto. In fact, there's going to be another in 2027. Juno is going to be let me just add her in so we can see that. Juno is going to be with Uranus. She's not at this particular moment, but as she moves forward into July 2027, she's there with Uranus, just where we find Venus at this particular point. And again, I had to choose, because they're not, I had to choose a point. So this is where the trine is between Pluto and Uranus, but they don't line up exactly in the same way each time. So there's always going to be something that's relating more precisely to the next thing, not always exactly aligned. But anyway, just to say, that's the next one. That's the middle of 2027. That's anywhere around 6 degrees, right? And that's part of this moving back and forth that the outer planets do. They very, very slowly make their way through. Pluto takes 2 years to get through 1 degree. Uranus a little bit quicker. But and then Neptune also about a year and a half to get through 1 degree. And then if we go, we'll find the other one now, 2020, where did we go? Here we go. 2028 is here now. And there we're moving into the next phase. And then the next phase is 7 to 9 degrees. And so here we find again this dance that's going on in 2028. Here we have Juno again, this part of this dynamic. Juno is part of the story. Remember, Juno is the wife of Jupiter, and she one of many wives of Jupiter, and she is about contractual relationships. So it's very interesting that currently we have Juno rather, on Pluto, and the social contract is breaking. For me, that's what I see as, and I mentioned that in previous videos. The social contract is breaking with Juno and Pluto, and now with Jupiter in opposition on the Barbault basket of 2026, we see that that's coming from leadership, the pressure of who gets to decide, who's the king, who's in, who's out, and the tension there. Now, that can also be where there's sudden collapse of leadership. I do believe that's part of this. I'm not saying that they're all going to be permanent features, but the quality of leadership that we have in these times in Western governments, particularly the US, the UK, Germany right now, but Canada's can't wait for this whole technocratic state to emerge. I see that with Carney, he's accelerated so much change in the direction of totalitarianism. Even Ireland, I'm Irish as well, that Ireland has gone from being neutral and kind of stepping back on the margins of things to being, coerced to get into NATO and all kinds of crazy. Anyway, it's just all whatever. It's all there. Anyway, the whole point being that all of this is happening in such a way that we're getting these triggers at each time, and the triggers are also where many other alignments are happening. You saw that in 2010, you saw that in the 2011 to 2015 bracket. There are lots of things that keep coming together to enhance the quality of time. So we're going to come back and talk about these things. And I'm going to repeat again what I said earlier on, which is I'm only sharing this so you have a sense of the progression of these times, not so that you feel anxious about what's going to change. We don't know at this point what is going to change. We can only speculate, and 50-50 that we're right about the speculation. So just notice that there's going to be a Saturn and Chiron conjunction in Taurus that will be in a square, and that is also part of an interesting dynamic of the nodal axis now in Cancer and Capricorn squaring Aries. So we know change is afoot. We know these are big changes. We know these are structural and difficult situations that require a lot of adjustment. But the trine between Uranus and Pluto is also saying, okay, well, there's a way of working with this. And then the sextiles that are part of the midpoint here, where we find, Neptune hanging out at the midpoint between that, in that trine, which is what we're calling this minor grand trine. Neptune is giving us the creative imagination, but watch out because Neptune is also deception and lies and propaganda and not seeing clearly. So we have to stay true to our hearts and get into the depth of what we feel is our truth at that time, not our opinion, which is what often people think of when they think of my truth, but the real truth. This is me being alive. The next breath is what I know to be true. That's it. Right, here we go. Now we're going to keep going because there's some pretty phenomenal things coming up here. One of which is the Pisces new moon on the Ides of March. This is connected. Not only is it connected to this structure, this now minor grand trine, you can see it here between 8 to 10 degrees. This is part of it. It's now starting to slowly separate, but it's still very much there. This minor grand trine now, where Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus are still connecting with each other, just more loosely. And when I say loosely, I mean really it's still within a degree or two maximum of each other, which is huge. Now, I chose this Pisces new moon because the exactitude, or the closest we can get to an exact configuration here, is on the 16th of March, where 15th of March, we have a new moon in Pisces. And if you follow me regularly, you'll know that I work with the lunar families, and this is connected to the new moon we had now in 2026 in Pisces at 28 degrees of Pisces. I think it was the 16th of, well, let me just check that. The 19th of March. So the 19th of March, 2026, we had the Pisces new moon, and it's connecting us all the way to this point of 2029 on the Ides of March. Beware the Ides of March. And here we have Mars in opposition to Neptune. Mars is retrograding at this point. We have Jupiter also retrograde in opposition to Eris. Now, I'm calling these because they're very tight. It's really quite significant. We have Juno, who's been part of the other configurations in opposition to Saturn, which is part of this growing dance between Saturn and Chiron, which will be again, because Chiron and Saturn have such slow and repetitive cycles, it will be about a year and a half before they separate from this conjunction. But you see how these things are shaping up. And this is creating a grand cardinal cross with the nodal axis, Mars and Neptune in opposition. So we're in for repeated cycles of change, and we want to get away from the notion that this summer, because there's this Barbault basket, everything is going to change. There's going to be a big change. There's going to be a cycle of change that's quite important that begins, this is part of triggers that begin new phases of cycles. In fact, I've already spoken about the fact that Pluto and Jupiter were together in 2020. That was part of the configuration that also included the grand conjunction or the great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter together, also in 2020, also including the triple conjunction where we had Saturn, Pluto, and Mars, because that was the COVID signature. All of these different things were happening and several times throughout 2020, but what we're in 2026 is the opposite, the full moon phase of that. And that's why I keep calling in these issues that are repeating patterns of things that started earlier on. We look back to 2010, we look back to the middle of the 2010s. Those were big triggers for real disruption around the world that accelerated in the 2010s. That's where the US started to instigate things like the Arab Spring of 2011 and provoking things behind the scenes to collapse all of these countries like Syria and now Lebanon and so on and so on, Libya. And all of these things are triggers that are based in other earlier triggers. We can even go right back to 2000 and 2001, but this is not what this video is about. You can do that on your own. But just notice that these patterns are calling in earlier stories. So they are about looking at and reviewing where we are relevant to earlier stories. And you can do this in your own life. So where we were in March, where you were in your life in March 2026, you can look forward to all the things that you want to change going over the next 3 years, which will then offer this new vision of change from that point on in a new dynamic. And there you can find the aspects of your own natal chart where things show up for you. All right, I'm going to stop at 2029, but this story continues into the 2030s. If you're familiar with something called Agenda 2030, you will, perhaps like me, realize that these powers that are working bigger systems of conspiracies, and yes, they are conspiracies, bigger systems of conspiracies to work the functioning of society in such a way that things change along the lines of what they want. They will no doubt be working with astrology because this is an unusual timing. They chose 2020 originally. Remember, going back in time, it was all about 2020. And lo and behold, that failed. Things didn't really quite work in that way. So they revised. Now they say 2030 because they had hoped everything would be complete by 2020, but there were a few bugs in the system. And now we can again look and say, well, there will be bugs in this system too. So nothing is guaranteed. This is what I'm trying to communicate. Just that this is the trajectory. Where will the bugs be in the system? I think a lot of it will come through what people start to wake up to and realize and start to operate from a different place, start to look at what's going on in their own countries, in their own communities, in their own environment, and say, that's not working for me. So this new moon has a lovely Pisces conjunction. I would talk about that in about 3 years' time. So I'll be back to talk about that later on if I'm still around. But let me come back to this Barbault basket thing. Um, so this is, of course, our moment in time. As I said, this is the flavor of this time. This is just the quality of time that we're in. It does not signify that this is going to change everything. And I want to emphasize yet one more time that this is part of the dynamic of the Pluto-Neptune sextile, which is the part of the bigger dynamic of the Kali Yuga, which is that everything is upside down. That what is popular is not necessarily right. It's just popular, and that's amplified by social media. So clickbait titles create a lot of anxiety, a lot of emotion, a lot of excitement, and they get a lot of views. Um, when you're trying to communicate something more deep, you're not going to get that interaction. But it doesn't mean that it's not worth paying attention to. And what is more important, I think, is to feel how you feel when you look at the title of something or when you look at the way something is presented and try to feel what the energy is behind it. Is this person trying to get me all excited about something which actually is unsubstantiated or unsubstantial or insubstantial, and recognize that there's a purpose and a meaning behind it. So obviously there's a purpose and a meaning to me presenting these things to you first and foremost to inform and share my worldview and my experience and so on, but also because I want to generate new clients. I want you to know that I'm here. That's why I do this. But there are other people who monetize their channel who actually, for each time you view, will actually make money. So, of course, their incentive is to have lots of viewers, but it doesn't necessarily mean that lines up with what is actually true or what is really going on. So, beware of this. This is part of the times that we live in. Kali Yuga is all about deception, false gurus, false appearance of things. And what we have to do through that, and what is the stated in terms of the tradition as the most enriching thing about Kali Yuga, is to do our spiritual work and be as grounded as we can be and recognize what is true with the sense of the capital T truth that is the eternal truth, right? Not about waiting for extraterrestrials to come and save us, or I don't know, whatever, harmonic convergence, going to fix everything. So worrying feels like you're doing something. Worrying feels productive. Worrying feels like you're going to be able to solve this problem, but it actually just generates more anxiety, and it also spreads that around. It makes you a burden for other people because you're not contributing, but you're also pulling people into your drama. So that doesn't really get you very far. It's why you feel stuck. It's why you feel paralyzed. So if you're constantly worried or looking at things to have certainty, if you're watching 50,000 YouTube videos or drawing 60 tarot cards a day to try and get an answer to something, you're simply confusing yourself. You're creating more delusion. And this is something to be aware of. Neptune is at the midpoint between the Uranus and Pluto trine. So that's what's creating this mini or minor grand trine. Neptune is at the midpoint. And then from the other side, from Jupiter, wisdom, to delusion, Neptune, or imagination or inspiration, potentially also idealism. Uh, it can also work in our favor if we're clear that we find Uranus. And Uranus is in Gemini's, sort of house of, or the sign of thinking, reflecting on things. And this can be highly intuitive. It can be incredibly insightful. So these are the potentials, but we have to calm down. We really have to calm down, get over this sense of this is what is going to happen. So if anybody tells you that they think this is what's going to happen with 100% certainty, you know that that's coming more from them wishing to be seen as an all-knowing oracle as opposed to what is actually true. We can give the flavor, like I said, like a weather report. So here we're just looking at this and saying this is likely based also on what's already happening. And that's why when we really look at this configuration, we will only understand it months from now, maybe years from now, looking back. We'll look at it with an understanding of, oh, this was really the direction of things. Because when you're in it, it's very, very difficult to know the exact direction of things. So there's no way of knowing the future exactly. So the more you're seeking certainty, the more you're creating anxiety for yourself. Paradoxically, the more you allow for things to be in a flow and in the nature of things and living in the present moment, in the awareness of what's going on in the present moment, the more you're able to respond in a way that's extremely practical for this moment in time. There's so many other features of July that are going to be shifting us that if your focus is on what's happening next, you're going to get completely muddled and you won't be able to move forward. So only just understand, oh, this is part of the flavor of change that's happening right now, and not let yourself get carried away. So part of the basket formation is also a sextile that's independent of the basket formation, but it's simultaneously happening. Is part of this sextile from Mars to Saturn, and Mars is creating a trine to the moon. And then also part of the configuration here is that there's a square from Mercury to the moon, as I mentioned before, and to Saturn, which is creating a T-square. It's not perfect. It's just part of the energy that's shifting. So the moon moves really quickly, and that will have happened earlier in the day, but there's no like precise moment in time that we can say this is the moment. I just chose simply the Jupiter opposite Pluto to signify that 20th of July, but really the 19th of July, even the 12th of July, it's all happening. It's the middle of July. So don't get too hung up on a specific date either, because just know that these things are moving in a forward direction with things changing. So as I'm doing this, we're coming out of the Mars-Uranus conjunction that was squaring the nodal axis, which was actually a major trigger for this basket formation. So notice again, there's never one solitary event. So the Mars-Uranus conjunction at the beginning of Gemini in the square to the nodal axis was a major trigger that says, okay, now something new is presenting. This is the beginning of a 2-year cycle, and it's the closing out of the previous 2 years that started July 2024. And I did a video 2 years ago, July 2024. I did it before that, but let's say maybe it was May or June of 2024, which was focusing on this energy because it's a significant energy, even when the conjunction happens, all the more so when there's a square to the nodal axis of like fated change. Um, and I called it the War of the Worlds. Now, somebody accused me of being clickbaity, but the truth is that's the name of the production that was Orson Welles reading a story that was actually prepared by the Rockefeller Foundation and their media program, which became later on part of MK Ultra and part of the propaganda machine, which was about manipulating public opinion and manipulating public emotions. And this is what's important about all of these different moments in time. They're relating back to all these other things. And now we've got Mars and Uranus in Gemini. And again, in another video, I'll talk more about how that relates to geopolitics, because this is a repeating pattern in the United States chart, in the Sibley chart for the US, of their seventh house of open enemies and relationships of all kinds, trade relations, and so on. So we're in a period of major shifting in so many different ways that is following on from the Pluto return of the United States, which started really in earnest in, it would have been starting to feel strong already in 2020, but really came to a head in 2023 and 2024. I think that's all I want to say about this particular chart. Um, the sun is squaring Eris at this time. Jupiter is coming out of the square with Chiron, which I've spoken about in other videos. I have a whole separate video of Chiron, and I have a course that is I will upload about Chiron through the houses that you can follow in your own time. Just a short workshop based on the workshop I did last week with a group of people, but excluding their charts, just the presentation part of that. So if you're interested in the Chiron through the houses therapeutically, you can buy that one too when it's available. So all of these things I've touched on in different ways, and all of them relate to this moment in time. This is not like a new moment in time. It's an impetus for something different to happen in the context of the moment in time that we are in. And again, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Nobody does. We just know that this is an impetus for major change. With Pluto in opposition to anything, we know that major disruption and transformation is the theme. And here we have a Jupiter ruled by the sun, which is 12 houses away from it, in the sign of the family, in the sign of nurturance, in the sign of nationhood, Cancer. And again, I've talked about that in the Jupiter ingress video. There's two of those, one for the sign by sign, one for the general introduction. And I invite you to watch those to learn more about that in general. But this is part of that cycle as well, this changing cycle of Jupiter now 6 years on from the conjunction with Pluto, triggering what happened in 2020 and looking at it and saying, which direction is this going? The answer to that is unclear because we're in a system that is well underway. And even if you're like me and you're working online, and if you're living in a country like I am in Belgium, where everything is done online, finances, healthcare, you name it, everything is done via apps or via websites. Um, it's puts us in a situation of deep vulnerability based on something that is actually genuinely convenient. All of my banking is through the internet, and that can be switched on or switched off at any time, just as it was done in Greece and just as it was done in Cyprus in years gone by. And those years tie into the enshittification years that I was describing after this 2010 T-square. So again, you can go back to the last time that the nodal axis was in the Leo Aquarius angle of the chart or dyad of the chart, and I'll do a separate video about that. There's just too much to say, as you can imagine. So the collapse of finances is very, very likely at this time. Collapse meaning something new has to come in. And how that will look is very difficult to say. There's also, because of this, well, in resonance with, we could say not because of, but in resonance with Mars-Uranus, conjunction in a square to the nodes, but even just Mars-Uranus, there has been an enormous amount of volcanic activity here in Europe, in Indonesia as well. Mount Etna erupted a few days ago. Um, and in Indonesia, there's been several major eruptions. There's been earthquakes in sequence in many different places, Venezuela, obviously, and then also in California, Mexico, a number of different places having eruptions through Asia as well, Japan, Eastern Russia, and Indonesia again. So there's lots of activity going on around the world, some of it instigated by fracking. This much is true, this much we know in terms of Venezuela, that can be part of the story. That way of extracting gas from underneath the earth that is trapped between shale or in the rock that they have to explode, and that's what's called fracking. It's a fractional something or other. I can't remember what the full term is, but that's creating earthquakes, even in places like Pennsylvania and crazy places that don't normally have earthquakes, aside from polluting water and stuff. So all of that to say that some of this is man-made, some of it is happening. And again, we want to understand the degree to which we are able to control certain things and not control other things. Mount Vesuvius erupted, over Pompeii, and that was a natural disaster. You can't do anything about that. That's part of the draw of karma. You drew the short stick. Well, that's the end of the story for that particular lifetime. And then there's another story that comes. Right. And then remember, as I said, destiny is what you do with this moment. It's not what's happening to you in this moment. That's the karma that brought you to this point, and your destiny is based on the choices that you make about that going forward. Don't be anxious. Anxiety is coming from you needing certainty, and you're not five. None of you watching this are 5 years old. So it's time to get to that place where you really take responsibility for your behavior, for your emotions, for your way of thinking, and to recognize that the more you fall apart and become anxious, the more of a burden you become for everybody else around you. And that's not to say that there are moments where we don't need help, and that's absolutely true for each and every one of us. But it's to say that if that's your consistent pattern, which is running around like Chicken Little, then you really need to look at that pattern, and that will be your transformation. This is the change that can be internalized as well as externalized. So coming to this place of recognizing all of life is uncertain, only death and taxes are certain, and worrying is blocking your progress. It's not there's no way to know your future, and worrying about it is not going to get you closer to any certainty. All right. So let's go through sign by sign. And I'm just going to go through the hours to put Aries on the ascendant here so that we can work our way through this. Of course, we're going to lose the exact basket configuration, but it doesn't matter because it's such a, again, like I said, an event. It's a big event. So here we are with Aries, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. And what we're looking at here, of course, for Aries is part of the configuration. You are a really big part of the story, especially because of Saturn and Neptune being renewing their journey together in your sign since 2025, but also exact on the 20th of February this year at 0 degrees of your sign. And so this is still true because they're still within a 10-degree orb, which is incredibly tight. But even if we extend that orb over the 2 years, so up until like 2028, the 12th of April, 2028, when Saturn moves finally into Taurus, they're still conjoined by signs, so they're still slow enough that they impact each other. But this is it, really. 2026 and then into 2027 is the peak of that. And it's very much affecting you. Your journey is changing a lot. You might be becoming very spiritualized with Neptune there. And the fact that it's in a sextile to Pluto in the 11th house, and especially if you haven't already got the annual for your sign, I really invite you to get it because I spoke at length about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction for you in terms of how that's a life changer, how a long-term game changer for you. You can still get that just for €9. Click the link below in the description box. And then the fact that that's the sextile to Pluto here at the top now with Juno, which is all about relationships and contractual engagements and the way that you bond or decide not to bond any longer with people. That is how you connect now to your future, but also groups, society at large, the vision that you have for society and the vision that you have for yourself. If you have an elder sibling, this can be part of that. Saturn is in your sign and it's ruling the 11th house. So it might mean that you need to take responsibility for someone in your family, an uncle, an elder sibling, an aunt, something like that, on your paternal side, generally speaking. And so that would be one way that that could show up for some of you. But in a general sense, it's really about deciding I need to see my life differently. I need to take responsibility for my role in life. And I want to see, I want to have a vision for who I am and why I'm here. And if there's any sense, because this can also be the Neptune aspect of that, if there's a sense that you feel disappointment in where you are in life right now, then just say thank you. Thank you for that awareness. I'm grateful that I recognize that I don't really feel like I am where I want to be. And that will determine how you put your future together from this point on. What is it that I'm not enjoying? How do I want to move forward? And one of the ways that you can move forward is through the trine from Neptune to Jupiter, which is highly inspiring, spiritual, in your fifth house of how you express yourself and showing you a vision for something that could be much more fun, much more expansive. Maybe this is about having children. Maybe it's about finding new love. It can be loving who you are in a bigger way. And this is part of the Saturn, where there's also taking responsibility for yourself, not in the sense of like, I have to do everything. It's in the sense of this is who I am, and this is how I'm showing up. And is that working for me? And is that bringing joy to other people? Is that bringing goodness to other people? Or is that harming other people? Is that bringing people down? Is that a burden for other people? That's part of the Saturn maturation process through Aries. Um, the the sextile that's coming from Neptune in your first house to Uranus now in your third house, and I've done videos on the ingresses of all of these planets, so you can watch them separately, and then we're piecing it together here. So I'm not going super into detail. But with Uranus in the third house, again, issues around sibling relationships or neighborhood relationships or the relating to people around you, even how you relate to your early childhood, even how you relate to things like, what are my skills? Do I need to upgrade skills? Do I need to change? You know, your ruler here has been all through July with your, so Mars, your ruler, has been with Uranus, and there may be a realization around Like, what skills do I need to develop, or what skills am I not using? And this is part of the trine here with Neptune and Jupiter saying, look, you've got more to show, you've got more to expose, you've got more to share with people. And that sextile can be incredibly insightful. It can be something that really gives you deep insight into what it is that you picture, how you're visualizing your life, how you want to see your life take form going forward, because this is the beginning of a process, right? It's the instigation of something. And this cycle, as we just saw in the beginning, please watch the introduction if you haven't, you will see this cycle repeating again and again and again in the next 4 or 5 years. It just keeps repeating and separating slowly as it's repeating. So very much a part of this moment in time. And this is just adding the offering of Jupiter now creating this particularly strong formation. But it doesn't take away from the longer journey that we're on here for about 5 years. The fact also that this Uranus in your third house is in a trine to this Pluto is saying that there's a new way of thinking about things for you, Aries. This is a new way of communicating about things or finding ways of communicating, and that can include deciding that you want to go online or offline. You want to go off grid. You want to go in a direction that is novel and different. This is the third house, 11th house trine because it's got something to do with commerce or integrating what you know and learn and teach in a practical way, how you interact with society in a general sense, and also, of course, anything to do with social media or the internet is part of this story. And equally, because, eventually as we get to the end of July, we've got the North Node moving into that 11th house. So that becomes even more of the story. So this is where I'll come back and talk about that in the week ahead or so. But you're integrating something that is a vision at this stage. So you may not know yet what all those details are. Mercury, which is ruling Uranus and Mars here in your third house, is retrograde at this point. And you may have to go through this process, which I've already spoken about in other videos, around finding your security to get to this understanding of how am I going to reach out? How am I going to branch out? How am I going to open up in this new direction, in this new thing? This can also be about commerce because all of this dynamic around the third house, 11th house, and the seventh house, where we find the moon, which is part of this configuration in terms of its opposition here with Saturn and square to Mercury. It doesn't appear that exactly here, but that's what's coming through this day on the 20th of July. So that is highlighting something about the other relationships in general, but also think in terms of business because the seventh house is business, how you interact, how you connect with people, how you communicate with people. Seventh is your life partner or your business partner or your clients. It's business in general. It's like the forum of business. Third, seventh, and 11th houses are social houses, how you're connecting with people in general. They're also known in the Indian astrology as the karma houses, the houses of pleasure and enjoyment. And you do have Jupiter in your fifth house, again, trying to this Neptune, deep inspiration and spiritual motivation, but also just a sense of fun and joy and pleasure. And so this can also be a part of it. It's not to say that everything should be about your pure personal growth and development and spiritual growth and development. You also, on the way, get to have ice cream and nice things, and maybe have a new partner and new ways of partnering up in a bigger sense, in a bigger way. So at the time of this basket, and I've done a separate video about that as well, we've got a Jupiter square to Chiron that's separating now, but that's also part of the journey of understanding. There's a kind of a mild T-square with Pluto in opposition and Jupiter squaring Chiron. And so there's part of the healing around your any wounding around your identity in terms of your value, in terms of your self-worth, in terms of money, issues around money. So again, if this is part of a story of having to recalibrate for business, it might be that it's because of a story around money or income. Your job changes, the income drops away, or something along those lines. And I'm not saying that is what I'm seeing. I'm saying that can be one of the potentials here. There's a number of those different things, especially because Venus is ruling your second house from the sixth house of work at this time. So there can be some disgruntlement. Venus is a little bit picky when she's in Virgo. Dissatisfied is a way of looking at that. perfectionist and wants things to be a particular way. So maybe you haven't quite found that yet, and you're working your way through that at this time as you go in this new direction for whatever this is. Now, keep in mind, this is a longer journey. We're going to keep coming back and talking about this, but just think in those big picture ways, in that broad-minded way. Events that happen around this time through July, and especially into August as we continue this story and then go through the eclipses, which tend to kind of nudge things forward in a more accelerated way. This is where you start to say, oh, I'm reframing things based on all of the different changes that have happened over many years gone by. I'm reframing, but I'm still needing to know what is today's job. What do I need to do today? You're one of the Dharma houses. The first, the fifth, and the ninth house are related to Dharma, our sense of purpose. And Dharma is not just a life purpose. It's not just like, what am I here for? But it's also about what does this moment require of me? What is the right use of my time, my attention, my livelihood, all those different things. That's part of your personal dharma in this moment. Maybe your personal dharma in this moment is to clean the toilet. It's really like that basic. Sometimes it's all about the life vision. Sometimes it's about changing a diaper. That's the way that goes, right? So what is mine? What is not mine to deal with? And that's Saturn going through your sign for 2 years till April 2028, which is part of this background of all of this bigger picture of change. What is mine to take responsibility for? And where can I step up? And where do I need to step back? Because that might be part of your lesson too. That depends on your natal chart. So right, I'm going to leave that there. I think that's it for now. We'll come back with different videos throughout the month of July to look at these bigger changes that we're all going through. And I wish you every success. Bye for now. So for Taurus, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, we have this unusual configuration in houses that are important in terms of the backbone, what you could call the structure or the backbone of your life, especially because Pluto for 3 years now has been, 3.5 years at this point, has been at the top of your chart. So the 10th house is your sense of your overall status in the world, your direction in terms of your personal ambition. It can be involving career or vocation. It's often associated with that, but it can also be about parenting, your role as a parent, or your relationship to parents, or your relationship to hierarchy in some way. What has power over you? Who's your daddy? This is all of that, Pluto in your 10th house. And Jupiter is opposing that right now from your 4th house of home. That often comes with a really nice feeling of ease, security, but it can also be, depending on your natal chart, a sense of there's so much to think about. And this can also be in reflection to the greater sense of home, homeland, lineage, my people. Maybe you're feeling at this stage in your life that you're really reflecting on where you come from, especially because Neptune and Saturn are in your 12th house of ancestors. It's a spiritual placement in the 12th house. It's about faraway lands. Maybe you've come from another place, or you're really deeply connecting now. You're bonding in some way that's different now, in the last year, let's say, with your ancestors, or with your spirit guides, or with your spiritual ancestors. Jupiter in the 4th can expand your sense of family and home as well. And that can include an expansion of family in the sense of having children, or more connection with your children, or a better connection with your children. This is an ongoing process for the next year, but because it's triggering this basket, it's going to be adding in all of these other elements of that. So Venus, your ruler, is in your 5th house, also of children and your self-expression, of joy and fun and love, romance, creativity, how you're creating things. Taurus, you're a perfectionist because you have Virgo on the 5th. So if it's not perfect, I don't do it. So that could be something to look at. Where do I resist change, or I resist things coming through me because of this damn Virgo on my 5th house? That makes me feel like I have to be perfect before I can show up in any way, shape, or form, or before I can create something. That may not be your personal case, but that's the archetype of Taurus. And so here we have Venus on the 5th, and She's pulling you in that direction of, can I have more fun? Can I show up in a way that I recognize what I need through the Jupiter in the fourth house, through the Pluto in the 10th house, what I need to be happy? And with the Chiron in the first house, recognizing where there's some wounding around your own maybe worthiness of receiving. Am I worthy of receiving? Am I worthy of having? Am I worthy? Full stop. And how do I overcome that? This is part of the journey of Chiron for you. I've done a separate video on that. And then the Venus in the fifth house is offering you the opportunity to pull your attention into that fifth house and look at different ways that you hold yourself back from going on that journey of self-expression. But Jupiter is showing you what you need to feel secure, and Venus is trying to show you how to express that, or how to express your happiness. Where does happiness come from? That's the fourth house. And where do you express it? That's the fifth house. And Mercury is retrograde. Mercury is ruling Venus at this time while she's in Virgo, and Mercury is also ruling Uranus and Mars, which are together in your second house, and especially Uranus being very tightly configured to Jupiter by sextile. A change in values or a change in your own sense of self-worth that can help you with this sense of feeling more secure, more established, more realization around what I need to be happy. Maybe I realize I need less. Maybe I realize I'm hoarding and I need to let go. Maybe I realize I've always been looking at what I don't have, the glass half empty, and now I can see that differently. And this is part of this particular moment in time. This can also be with reference, again, to family or family support, what's coming through that. This will depend on how it's configured in your chart. Of course, anything that's really the first 10 degrees of these signs is really being impacted at this time, but just think of it thematically, it's in that house. And then this Uranus in your second house, which is also changing your sense of money and possessions and investing and all these things, is also in a trine to this Pluto in your 10th. So this could also be a representation of what you want to change if you're still working, for example, actively, or parenting actively, or whatever, how you want to make some change around your relationship to family, your relationship to money, your relationship to what you need for support, your relationship to what's available to you as a resource, or how you use yourself as a resource. And that's in a trine then to this Pluto, which then says, okay, that's how we're going to change the way we show up in the context of that. And then here we have in the other configuration, this Uranus Neptune sextile, which is pulling in possibly worry around loss or regrets around loss if something has been lost. And that can be a loss of money, it can be a loss of faith, it can be a loss of or a disappointment in something that feels like I wish that didn't happen, or I wish things had been different. This can be part of the dynamic here. It can be a financial story of loss, or it can be a loss of an actual person, a loved one. And you're looking at that, you're seeing, okay, now things have shifted for me, things are changing. If this is about something that's far away, foreign, because 12th house can also be that, and Saturn is ruling the 9th house, which is also about foreigners and faraway places in terms of foreign philosophies, foreign ideas, foreign politics, foreign people, pilgrimage as well. So it's all in the 12th house. There may be a sense of I need to step back or get away for a little bit so that I can clear what I believe or understand what I have faith in. What is it that I really need to look at? Do I need to look at my relationship to death? Do I need to look at my relationship to my life? Am I alive while I'm living? Would be a great question right now. Neptune in a trine to Jupiter, which is part of the basket configuration from your 12th house to the 4th house here, fire trine, is deeply inspiring. It's a consideration around your faith, what you believe is possible for you, but also what you believe in, what you have faith in. And so that also is something you can tie in to what makes you feel secure at this time. Can you draw on a deeper faith? Can you draw on something that makes you feel like, okay, it's actually fine. I see now that it will be fine. And I see where I can reach into that. Chiron will be there in your first house until September, and then it moves back until next April. You'll see a separate video about that, but it's particularly strong for you, Taurus, because it's about you, really, personally. Sun, moon, or ascendant, it will impact you in ways that are very personal. And you'll see in the description box how I'm interpreting that. I just don't say that each time. And and so to recognize that this is a big shift that can also be really enriching for you, that you make your peace with what money and valuables have represented to you up until this point and how that might need to change. Recognizing if there's been or needs to be a financial shift or a relational shift to money or yourself as a resource or what's available to you in terms of resources, then you're well suited to do this right now. You're really well suited to finding this new sense of faith and inspiration and philosophy that allows you to make these changes in constructive ways for you. So I will leave it at that, Taurus, and I wish you all the best as you go forward with these bigger changes. And I'll see you in the next video. So Gemini, you're another sign that is really highly involved in this, immediately personally involved in this configuration called the basket. And we find this in your first house that Uranus has been moving into since July of 2025 until 7th of November 2025, and then again from the 26th of April. And so this is now a peak moment where it's starting to align perfectly with Pluto by Trine in your ninth house, which is about your purpose. And you will have been already for the last 3 years reflecting on this, reflecting on why am I alive? What is life all about? Maybe what is my relationship to God? What is my relationship to my father? What is my relationship to a higher philosophy of life, a guiding philosophy of life? And now Uranus is coming in and making you come closer in some way to who you are. Uranus is really about extreme individuation. And this is part of the process. And initially, it can feel like really destabilizing. It's like, I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't even know what kind of clothes to wear. And all of this can change for you in a dramatic way. And again, how you relate to that change is either you play with it and have fun with that and experiment. Like, where am I close to who I am? Part of the journey for Gemini is to speak authentically, to speak with truth. That is part of the theme. And so not only communicating with truth and speaking with truth, because here we also have the Jupiter now in your third house of communication in Leo, which is about integrity. Do you speak with integrity? Do you say what is true? Do you show up with integrity, or do you just let it kind of slide? Jupiter rules your seventh house. This will really impact your relationships, the dynamic of your relationships, even your career, because Jupiter rules your 10th house as well. And so this would be one of the lessons that you can perfect or move through as you're recognizing there's so much that's extraneous that I've been like playing this role or this kind of ego identity of who I am. I can let it go and I can find myself in a different position now with reference to why I'm here, but also how people see me going forward. And then Jupiter is in this trine to Neptune, which is in the 11th house from the third house of, choice and thinking about things and deciding things and being creative in terms of whether it be commerce or your artistic expression or whatever. And that is really, really helpful. It's very spiritual. It's very inspiring and gives you also perhaps a new motivation around society or around the people you hang out with. And that Neptune is also in a sextile to Uranus, which is in your first house. Now, Mars in your first house is ruling Saturn, Neptune, even Eris in your 11th house. I've spoken about that in a number of videos, so I'm really just focusing here on the basket stuff. And so there's a moment in this moment in time that you are personally engaging with in terms of your future and how you want to see yourself going forward. What is the dream? That's the Uranus Neptune, and especially Neptune in your 11th house. What is the dream? Saturn says through the 11th house, it says, the people that I spend time with are meaningful. There's a long-term commitment, there's a long-term sense of we're in it thick and thin, and these are the people who are deserving of my time. And it's not to say that you can't be social, you will always be social, but it's to say that there's a change in the way that you want to socialize or with whom you want to socialize. And the vision for your future you're taking pretty seriously here with Saturn. And then the vision of that is really being supported by both the sextile from your first house, where you yourself are changing and seeing things in a new way, the sextile to Neptune, And then the sextile to Jupiter, having big ideas, ideas that come from a place of real higher minded, ideally, sense of what you're here for and what you want to expand into, how you're using your resources. Your ruler is retrograde here in the second house of your worth and value. I spoke about that in the earlier video that I've done here, especially in the Jupiter ingress video and the Capricorn full moon video. You'll get more about that there. Um, but that's playing a role in terms of your self-esteem and the value you put on yourself and maybe your family as well. And then, of course, the trine from Uranus to Pluto, which I mentioned first off, which is also part of this configuration by sextile to Neptune, which is an ongoing story. Um, and that is where you're putting all these things together about my purpose, my vision for my life, my way of showing up, and that I realize is different now or has to become different. And also what I can really contribute in terms of the Jupiter in the third house. Where do I bring my skills? Where do I bring my knowledge? Where do I bring things coming from a place of I've got an idea and I need to share it. I need to express it. So Gemini, that's part of what you're here for, is to express something of yourself in a very literal way. And you can get dispersed. You can get bogged down in details. You can get bogged down in minutia. You can go into like gossip and wasting time scrolling. So this would be your moment to say, well, wait, if I want to orient myself towards something different and be a part of something constructive and not just talk about it, then this is your moment. This is the phase, let's say, through July that you can really seize and work on with a new vision for yourself. And then, of course, going forward right through till 2030 or beyond even. Do watch the introduction if you haven't seen that already, and you'll see what I mean by that. All right, so Gemini, Sun, Moon, and Rising, I'll see you in the next video. Good luck with everything. It's pretty exciting times to be Gemini right now, so I'll see you then. Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, you will understand that I just need to take a break for a drink, so give me a minute. I'll be right back. Okay, that's better. I'm a little more hydrated now, so here we are, Cancer. You may think this is not impacting you, but it's very much impacting you, although none of the planets are actually in your house of self. You're now without Jupiter in your first house. It's going into your second house. And I've done a separate video about that. But the fact that it's in your second house of your self-worth, your money, your resources, your family, is part of the trigger for this Barbault's basket. And so in that sense, that's what's really important of this moment in terms of your life. Think in terms of the immediacy of this moment, in terms of income, money that you have at your disposal, skills and talents that you can bring forward. That is part of because Jupiter is your exaltation ruler. So a very important thing to keep in mind anyway. Um, and so thinking about the future based on money, resources, your family, etc. And this is where we find the opposition from Pluto in your eighth house. And of course, we can include Juno up there too. There's a new contract or a new situation with other people. Is it a marital partner, a business partner? Is it something about tax? Is it something about resolving a tax issue? Is it something about reconstructing your salary, your income, your finances so that you are more clear around taxation or what is your due and what you owe? Is there something about money that you earn from clients that also needs a review? This is quite favorable in many ways to you. But the other aspect of the eighth house is a transformation through crisis. And there is a trigger here from Jupiter. Now, is this a crisis of expenditure? Is there something you need to spend money on? Is there something that's coming into your awareness around family? And now I need to resolve this. Is this a philosophical crisis? Is this a crisis of self-worth? Um, the eighth house is money that you can receive from others, sometimes through adversity, meaning like it's inheritance or it's an insurance payout. So you're getting money, but it's because you had an accident, or you're getting money but somebody died so that you get that money. So this can be part of that because the Jupiter is on your side in terms of in some way receiving money or having money And again, that will depend on your natal chart. It's not guaranteed, but that's the basic philosophy. Or having to expend money, but it's for a good reason. It's not like just don't buy a dress kind of thing, but it's really about, or go ahead and buy a dress, but it's just like it's money that you're spending because you see the value behind it. You see the reason behind it in this particular instance. Um, and so this is part of whatever the Pluto is representing for you now in terms of major transformation, and that transformation can come through shocks and surprises or crises, or even understanding fears. What is the fear? How am I overcoming any particular fears in my life? And certainly because that's a long journey here, you've already been 3 years into it with Pluto in the eighth house. So certain fears may have come up, and then you really can examine that already, and now it's just being highlighted. And the difference is here we have a trine with Uranus in your 12th house. So the energy of Uranus has been in your 12th house. It started in mid 2025, so it's not necessarily new, but it's just perfecting right now. So this is not necessarily going to be something out of the blue. It's something that you're kind of looking at and thinking, yes, I see what's coming down the pipeline. I just don't know when or how it's going to manifest. And this is especially with the Uranus-Mars conjunction that happened at the beginning of July, which was also in a trine to Pluto and a sextile to Neptune. This is also a part of a sequence of change, things that are happening in your 12th house, or the eighth house, even if we include that, which have to do with the unconscious mind, or your any aspects of things that are secret or taboo or hidden from you or hidden by you, or hidden because they're not things that are comfortable or easy to reveal. Um, it can be don't cast your pearls before swine, kind of hidden, or it can be like there's certain things that I'm not prepared to discuss. Is it about something to do with a relationship? Is it about something to do with personal plans? Is it something to do with your spiritual growth? Because all of these are potentials here. And the fact that you have a lovely sextile, these are very supportive dynamics here. The Pluto opposition, Jupiter-Pluto opposition is tense, but it doesn't mean that bad things will happen. It means a big change is happening in this particular moment. And it's a shift that requires your attention because it's shifting based on the 6 year journey of, the conjunction that happened at the beginning of your eighth house there. So again, this is something that you can look back on and unfold from that. But here it includes now this sextile with Uranus, which is about insights and awareness. And now the 12th house represents things that are lost, or things that we are letting go, things that we are shedding. Now, the 12th house losing can be material loss, like money, or things that are people that are passing, or things that are happening in a way that we have to let go. And this can be part of the bigger configuration of the Pluto Uranus dynamic here. Um, and it can also be a loss of interest. These are air signs, so it's also about what we think about things. Loss of interest in the material realm, loss of interest in accumulation, loss of interest in money, loss of interest in the rat race, for example, this kind of thing. And this is also a part of the configuration of Neptune, which is sextiling Uranus and sextiling Pluto. So Neptune is being right in the middle. This is the triangle you see here. That's the midpoint between this configuration of trine with Pluto and Uranus. And Neptune here is the pinnacle of that, at the pinnacle of your chart, and saying, well, now how do you conduct yourself going forward? What is the role that you're taking on in the world, out the door, in your life? When you go grocery shopping, who do you show up as when you go out in the world? And Saturn is there and has been, again, since mid 2025. So you've been working your way through change, but this is like highlighting a specific offering of this is a moment of change. This is a moment of a real turning point that allows you to keep going more clearly forward in the direction that you want to go. And Saturn there is saying there's some responsibility you need to take at this point. Saturn is the ruler of Pluto in your eighth house, and it also rules your seventh house of relationships. So could be about responsibility in marriage or marital status that you are either creating or dissolving. And with Neptune up there, it can be either way. With Saturn up there, it could be either way. It's about endings and about the things that need to be established establishing a new relationship, can be I'm now divorced. I'm having a new relationship with my ex-spouse, or I'm in a new relationship with a new person. These are both Saturn meanings here in the 10th house, representing your seventh house. So these are opportunities for you to really look at that. And Pluto is in the house of marriage and intimacy with Juno, which is about commitment. So this can be the cycle where you look at that and you say, there's actually something new coming in here. And this is part of the part of the basket configuration, which represents also the trine that comes from Jupiter to Neptune, which is that there's something about the money that you earn or the way that you connect with reality, or this is what we call the Artha houses. Artha means the material stuff of life, like the stuff that we need to live in this three-dimensional world, the reality of housing and using money or some kind of exchange mechanism and eating food. These are all the actions of the Artha houses. Jupiter rules your sixth house, the other Artha house. And then, of course, Mars rules your 10th house from here in the 12th house. So there's a deep spiritualizing impact on Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. And this is a process that is going to be taking many years. It's a journey of many years, but that this year is highlighted by Jupiter, the exaltation ruler of Cancer. So there's something significant that Cancer can absorb here. Equally, the ruler of Cancer itself, the sign ruler, is the moon. And at this time of this perfection of the opposition between Jupiter and Pluto, which is just me randomly choosing that as a representation of this basket, is when the moon, your ruler, is in the fourth house in opposition to Saturn. And so there is something here, and ruled by this Venus in the house of your childhood or siblings or neighborhood, your people you hang out with, your friends, your gang. So there's something about where you live, how you connect with where you live, how you connect with your lineage. That's also the fourth house. And equally, these are the mute houses, the fourth, eighth, and 12th. This is the houses of what we call the moksha or liberation houses, where you're in a space that is non-material in one way. We can also say the actual house is here in the fourth or property or whatever, but it's also on a level of psychological or emotional connection with life. And also the lineage, which is not necessarily tangible that you come through. This is the big focus for Cancer at this particular moment. And all of that is coming through everything else that I've just described here, which is reshaping your relationship to your value, to the value of money, to your sense of how you want to reach out into the world, and based on what you feel is available to you. Now, Jupiter rules your ninth house as well as your sixth house of work. The ninth house is God, or the road to God, or the spiritual awareness of what's there. And because you have this deep psychological transformation and also this spiritual potential, this insight, this potential connection to something that is, again, the intangible, invisible stuff of life, there can be some realizations around this time, or if they could be intellectual realizations of things, and they can actually be profound spiritual realizations, which are also potential here. That depends on your natal chart, it depends on where you are in life, it depends on a number of different things. Um, and it depends on also your remaining open to that. And to be remaining open to that requires a little bit of a gap periodically in your day, where you allow yourself some free time without scrolling, without being entertained, without being consumed by other people, so that you stay in a bit of silence so that you can receive what is coming. This will be a cycle of your life going forward for many years, minimum for the next 6 years. Really, it's a big cycle, or 7 years, I guess, with Uranus going through the 12th, where you want to practice the art of listening, because there's so much involved in this moment in time, which is coming through immaterial, things that are dreams or unconscious or hereditary or spiritual awareness or insights. This can involve things that connect you to foreign lands as well, foreign places, through the 12th house dynamic, and then again through the Jupiter dynamic in the ninth, ruling the ninth, where you have the North Node, one more one more week at this point. Um, and also because Mercury is retrograde in the sign of Cancer for the first house, so rising, sun, moon, first house, Cancer, you're reflecting deeply on you, yourself, how you show up. And the ruler, of course, coming from the fourth ruled by Venus, which herself currently in Virgo is ruled by Mercury. And then that's what's also ruling the Mars, Mars, Uranus in Gemini. There's something here that you can really develop that it's about what am I in this moment? What am I about in this moment? And here we have a square to Saturn. Therefore, what is my role? If I'm this, I need this to be my role, or I need to show up in this particular way. So we're a couple of days out from the Mercury station. I will be coming back to do a couple of other videos, so we'll talk more about that. But just keep that in mind that because it's in your first house, you're reconsidering yourself, all aspects of your life, and especially as Saturn is in the 10th, it's the uh, it's the house of Saturn. The 10th house represents Saturn. Saturn represents authority, career. Everything that Saturn represents is represented in the 10th house as well. And in the natural zodiac, that's Capricorn, of course. So there's a lot to establish in terms of your authority, in terms of your role, the parental dynamic, or how are you in your role as a parent, or what is going on with your parents, or is that with reference to societal roles, the authority figures that are governing you, and how you're relating to that. And all of that is part of this moment in time as well, because until April 2028, Saturn is up there too at the same time that all of these things are being reconfigured. So, to sum it up, really, the thing is that there's just a profound spiritualization of what life represents to you at this time that doesn't prevent you from living in this three-dimensional world. It amplifies your way of living spiritually in the three dimensions in this world, living with a better sense of, um, let's say, a higher sense of purpose. There can also be a totally different engagement with your work online or behind the scenes, your healing work, if you're doing that, or your work in terms of if there's teaching going on, this kind of thing can be really accelerated as well in this time. Um, yeah, a lot of deepening. I'll come back again and again. We'll speak more about these things, but this is what I have for you up until this point, Cancer. And good luck with that. So Leo, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, you are part of this configuration in a massive way, and you have been already 3 years working with Pluto in your opposite sign of Aquarius, and now we have Jupiter in your sign opposing, creating as a trigger through the opposition, putting the lid, let's say, on this basket. If you think of an old-fashioned picnic basket, this is the lid of the basket, although in your case it's upside down. And here what we have is this Jupiter opposition to Pluto in your house of self and other. How am I relating to others? You've got Juno there too, so there's a lot of stuff around contractual limitations or obligations or desires. How do I navigate who I am in a relationship dynamic? Am I showing up in a way that brings something to the table, or am I expecting things to come to me? And with Jupiter in your house, it can feel really, really pleasant, very positive. You will be bringing a lot now to the table, to the relationship. One downside is that you can be obsessing a lot around yourself or feeling like you need more attention or that you're craving attention or that you're craving, a sense of more appreciation. Beware of that because that gets old for others. And then part of that is about filling your own cup, not always expecting others to admire and appreciate. So you allow yourself to know that you are worthy without needing others to tell you that. And here, where we find Jupiter in a trine to Neptune in your ninth house, so you're starting to get more of a sense of being in a new vision for your life or a new ideal for life, or you're an ideal version of why you're here. With Saturn there, there's a clarity also or a need for learning and clarity around your belief system and the structures that will get you to that ideal. There can also be a renewed relationship with your father, which is significant for Leo. The ninth house is fathers and father figures, teacher figures, counselors, guides, mentors, all that stuff. And it's really important for Leo to really have that relationship with those figures in your life. And this can reconfigure those relationships to those people in your life as well by in a really favorable way, very inspired motivation for how you want to show up now. And that's going to be with Jupiter in your house till next July 2027. There's a whole separate video that I did about that. And then, of course, we also have a sextile between Jupiter and Uranus, which is in your 11th house of your future. And part of this dynamic is about recreating something now in the future, something that you want to, you either have re-examined or examined for the first time, maybe your dreams or your vision for the future, or you have a completely novel way of looking at the future, how you want to reach out into life. The 11th house also represents your audience or the people around you. And so you might be changing based on that, or you might be changing the audience or changing the way you reach out to them. Maybe it's like, I'm changing the medium, I'm working online, or I'm sick of being online. I'm going to be literally physically on a stage. I'm going to reach out into people with a community organizational thing. I'm going to do something in the dynamic that allows me to connect with people one way or another. This will be a huge theme, a huge part of this journey for you. I'm relating to people in a completely different way. This is the theme of Leo. And in terms of leadership, if we take the whole archetype of leadership, you're here for learning that too. Doesn't again mean fame. It doesn't mean that you have to be president. It just means you are showing people you are the beacon, how you're modeling what it means to be alive, how you're modeling what it means to love yourself and express yourself without being needy, just saying, look how cool it is to be me. Look how cool it is to be alive. Look how cool it is to be in this sort of effulgent sense of self. And I share that with everybody with a sense of wanting to uplift through who I already am, not to necessarily have to be seen by that, but this can be part of what's contributing to this very big change in how you show up. And Mars in your 11th house is also part of a trigger I've spoken about again in terms of the lunation around the end of June, the Capricorn full moon. And that is in that square with the Nodal Axis. That was part of an impetus that you probably experienced as something of a different way of showing up with people, with your maybe sense of what you want going forward, what your future will hold, what you think is important to you, partly with this vision, the Neptune trining Jupiter. I've got this new vision. I've got this ideal around what life can be. You may find yourself disillusioned with father figures, with teachers, with spirituality, with the particular role that spirituality has played in your life up until this point. You may be like, oh, I thought that was about this, but I'm realizing not at all. And notice that that's extremely helpful. It's about clarifying something. And so being disillusioned, being disappointed is part of your journey with Neptune going through the ninth and saying, yeah, it's not what I thought it was. So what you have to do each time is pare it down to what is true for you. And that's also where the Uranus sort of energy, let's say, in the Gemini 11th house for you, the future society, maybe an elder sibling, you're getting closer and closer to being authentic, showing up authentically in society, out in the world, and you're realizing, okay, there was a bunch of stuff I believed, there was a bunch of stuff I was told, and I realized that's not what that is. So now I can show up differently. And it can be that there may be a test at this particular juncture or in some phase of this time where you feel like you're kind of the outsider. And in many ways, you can look around and say, are these people insane? And is that a good thing that I'm the outsider, therefore? And being marginal can be the most rational thing to do. Maybe that's it. You're marginalizing yourself. Or is there something I need to change because I'm not seeing what these people are trying to help me with, and I'm just rebelling like a rebel without a cause? Can I show up in a way that helps me to see that it's constructive for me as well? And whether or not that means you're in or you're out is a lot to do with this Pluto opposition from Jupiter, where there's this tension between yourself and others. Who controls you, who controls your way of showing up, who controls relationship dynamics? Where do you feel you're always in a power struggle? And can that be something that you examine as coming from this original father wound, the wounding of the relationship with your father, one way or another. The father was taking up too much space or too dominant in your life, or not at all dominant, not at all there, depending. And what was that for you? Was your father this constructive force, or was your father in a place that made it difficult for you to understand your identity and therefore your purpose? So this configuration is about reimagining all of that stuff, through all the different things that are who you are. Now, the sun at this time, your ruler is in the 12th house. It's a very spiritual place, but it's the hidden part of your chart. And so what I'm seeing in this is that to get to this place of understanding all of this is that you need to dig deep. You need to go into your spiritual self, your unconscious, maybe even separate yourself out from people or society just briefly to explore all of that, to look at that and say, okay, what do I need? And that's especially true for the journey that Mercury is in, the retrograde phase that Mercury is in your 12th house, where you can also look into ancestral stories or things that are hidden from you that may be behavior patterns, communication patterns, emotional patterns, um, that don't do you any good or don't do other people any good. And so all of that can be up for review, really, at this time. Um, so yeah, so that's it, Leo. We will be back again and again to look at more of these things, but it's a really beautiful opportunity to be a more bright and shiny Leo, going forward. That is not about taking up all the space, but it's about showing others how they can at least show up in the way that you're now learning to show up in your own life as well. Just fully embrace yourself and embrace your journey in life. I'll see you in the next video. Virgo, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. This configuration is affecting you in important parts of your chart that have to do with your social direction or your sense of your career and your vocation or your work dynamic, your job may be part of the literal story of what's going on right now. Changing your job, changing your role, changing your sense of what you're responsible for, um, changing your social status, especially with Uranus up in the 10th. Now, that already will have been true for you in mid-2025. This is a continuation of that story from the middle months of 2025, but it's now just perfecting this configuration with the addition of Jupiter. And your ruler, Mercury, is in the 11th house of the future or society, how you reach out into groups of friends and people that you, I don't know, connect with over ideas, let's say, or people that you just hang out with, or your elder sibling also. And there's a reflection phase here during the retrograde cycle, and that takes you all the way through till the 23rd of July, and then all the way into about the 10th, 11th of maybe 9th, 10th of August, when that finally goes into your 12th house. So your ruler will be in the 12th house through the rest of August. And why that matters is because it's part of the reconsideration of this opportunity of the basket configuration, that it's saying there's something big here that changes the way that you do your literal everyday life, and Jupiter as the trigger from the 12th house can really be about spiritually inspiring yourself in terms of mission or purpose, a higher value to what you do. Equally, Chiron is trinal to you from the ninth. I've done a separate video of that, but that's squaring this Jupiter, and again, in the place of your purpose, your higher purpose. So all of it coming together here. And Jupiter in the 12th can also represent something that is foreign, um, a figure from abroad, somebody who is away, or a desire to move abroad. I want to move. Jupiter rules your 4th house. I want to move abroad because fill in the blank. I'm getting married because I have a new job, because also Jupiter rules your 7th house. Um, I just got fired. Better chance, better opportunity somewhere else. I hate my president. That would be any number of about 30 countries that are listening in that could say that and want to get out of wherever they are. So this is the dilemma. Where would you go? But anyway, here's the Jupiter in opposition to that Pluto in the 6th house of work and maybe your health also. This could be something that's highlighting a either a pattern of behavior or a way of operating from behind the scenes. Jupiter representing more self-indulgence, overdoing it, where you recognize, oh, this is having an impact on my health, and therefore that has an impact on how I show up in the world. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It will be something constructive that you're recognizing that is part of the bigger change. Now, there's a trine from Jupiter in your 12th house of, again, spirit or what's unconscious to you or what's coming through things that are secretive or hidden to your 8th house of intimacy, crisis and transformation, psychological stuff, family stories, family secrets, family patterns. All of that is in a trine now. So there's insight and awareness. It's very favorable in the sense of awareness through spiritualizing what's going on or philosophizing what's going on, whatever that is for you, in the realization. So your Neptune is stationing on the 7th of July, stations retrograde. So at this point, going retrograde, I'll talk about that in a separate video just because it's too many details. But the Neptune retrograde in general is about reconsidering everything that's happened since February, basically looking at all of that stuff. And so with a reference to your maybe intimacy or marital status, your shared resources, what you have available or what's coming through a partner, what's coming through your partner's income or contribution. Is there a concern about that? Is there a loss around that? Is there a need to take that more seriously? Is there a need to take that more philosophically? What's going on there? Saturn in the 8th can make things feel tight financially, or it can feel like resources are not really coming your way, or that you're just needing to be serious about it. And that doesn't mean that money's not there. It just means you're taking it seriously. The moon rules your house of gains, the 11th house, where Cancer is, and that's where your ruler is. So the moon in your second house is ruling your ruler, Mercury, at this time. And so there is a realization around money, resources, your family, income that might come through you, or something is changing here. And then that is all part of this configuration by opposition to Saturn at this time, and then by a square to your ruler, Mercury retrograde. Um, Thinking in terms also of your value or the value that you give things versus the value others give things. The 8th house is also everything to do with occult stuff, psychological, sexual, emotional intimacy, um, taxes, and things that are coming your way or needing reorganizing around things that have come through government or through inheritance or through insurance payouts or something like that. There's some story of getting serious about those things, taking things in whatever way a little more seriously, or at least being keenly aware of all of those things. The 8th house is transformation, that can be something to do with, again, part of the Jupiter in the 12th house, having to make peace with what it means to be mortal. And so something might come through in an actual loss of a person, somebody important to you, or it can come through in just a spiritual realization around all of that stuff. Now, of course, we also have the Neptune in a sextile to Uranus, and that's coming from the 8th house, again, maybe with reference to all of these things about other people's money and so on, and how that's changing your social status. Is that changing your marriage? Is it changing your career ambitions? Is it changing your social ambitions? Is it changing the way that you show up to other people? Because the 10th house is your legacy. It's how you show up, how people see you, and how you want to be seen, and what you do out in the world. And so that's changing, that's for sure, since the middle of 2025, and that's over 7 years. So it's not like it's more a question of how. So what is the change? It will change. There's no disputing that. And the Mercury retrograde, your ruler retrograde now in the house of the future, can be just really the thing you need to focus on right now. What do I need to change? As it is in a square to Saturn in that house of intimacy and squaring the moon in the house of money and values, stuff like that. Now, this can also be, again, like I said, about behavior and things, patterns of behavior that are not necessarily good. This is 12th house of self-undoing or hidden enemies. And so recognizing where you just need to stay aware of what is for your greatest good. Jupiter has a kind of protective quality when it moves into the 12th house, but that comes through a more spiritual protection. And one of the things that can be very, in the Indian way of looking at it anyway, a kind of a remedy for Jupiter in the 12th, which represents loss as well, is to actually donate money, donate clothing, donate your time, because that kind of anticipates the loss. It's like, here, I'm ready to sacrifice this. I'm ready to give it away. So this can be part of that. Don't be stupid about it, but you can be generous and donate things with a sense of, okay, I'm shedding. It's a conscious shedding. And that's part of this bigger dynamic. And of course, we've talked many times about this Uranus-Pluto dynamic, changing around career, changing around social status, changing around how you do your everyday thing, your everyday life, and what that transformation will be like for you. And then equally, the Pluto in a sextile to Neptune, the everyday life or health issues that may come through also mental health, psychological problems or resolutions, finding therapy, finding people, because Saturn rules the sixth and the eighth can be finding great people to guide you, coach you, work with you, going forward. So a really wonderful time for you to really look down at the bare bones of life and say, things are changing. What am I ready to get rid of? Where am I resisting change? Where am I resisting the idea that things should look a particular way? This is a Virgo trait with that earth energy. Maybe you less than others, but you can become quite anxious about things. That's the sixth house air sign, Aquarius, Saturn ruled. So if you're becoming anxious, then look here in where Saturn is at your relationship to mortality, at your relationship to feelings of what is available to you. And do you feel, are you one of the glass half full people or half empty people? Either way, that needs to change so that your future can look different. All right. So I will leave it there and I'll see you in the next video. So Libra, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, Jupiter is up in your 11th house, opposing Pluto in your 5th house. So this is a huge pattern, and we've been talking about this for a long time if you've been watching me for a while. It's a huge pattern in the way that you show up in the world. It's a huge pattern in the way that you do you out in the world and how you are with other people, perhaps literally with your children, for example, or with your lovers, or with your way of just being yourself, the way that fifth house is your self-expression, how you reach out into what makes you have fun and feel joy and experience the sort of expansion of life. And Pluto has been there for a while. Now it's being opposed to by Jupiter in your 11th, which says, I have a bigger vision for my future. I have a bigger sense of what's available to me. I have a bigger dream. I have a bigger idea of who I want to connect with and how. This can be quite literal. The third house is ruled by Jupiter. Your sixth house of work, the third house of communication, ruled by Jupiter, can have you saying, no, I want a bigger audience. I want to expand my reach. And you can quite literally with this dynamic. And you take yourself in that new, like out of your comfort zone and into that new domain. And you say, this is how I want to reach people. And I want to expand into this new thing. And that can happen. Um, and then also from trinal to you, not only is the Pluto, but also Uranus in your ninth house of purpose, which is starting to be refined. And you'll see that there are moments where you really click in through July and August, but also over these next few years as these planets keep realigning and helping you kind of really solidify, really grapple with the thing that you really want to do, the direction that you want to move in. Has a lot for you to do with how you relate to people, potentially how you relate to your father, um, potentially how you relate to your second spouse or you're having a second spouse. And anyway, relationship in general, because this is the Neptune in the seventh across from you for now a very long time. It's going to be 14 years of having Neptune in your house of relationship and 13 more now, I guess, or 12 more now. And Saturn, your exaltation ruler, is here in that house of relationship too, part of this configuration because the moon that's in your first house is opposing Saturn. So there's something here where you're recognizing the cost of relationship for you or the reason that you do, what you do for other people. And there's a square here from Mercury in your 10th house where you're really reflecting on your social status, perhaps your like marital status or employment status. Your personal ambition is, do I have ambition? Is this the thing I want to do? Where do I want to take it? This will be the Mercury retrograde phase for you until the third week of July. So really just a few days after this, Mercury stations direct again and then moves back through the rest of your sign until about the 9th, 10th of August. So that will be part of this basket configuration, which is showing you something about your future, showing you something about how you can expand, maybe even literally through money that you earn. So Jupiter is the exaltation ruler of your 10th house of like career or what you do, what you're seen to be doing out in the world, what you feel responsible for out in the world. And when that ruler goes out into the 11th house, it brings you stuff. It brings you things. So you have this potential, especially if you're running your own business, but not only. What you're doing can bring you good fortune, and that can come in the form of finances, or it can come in the form of support or meeting some kind of benefactor or somebody who's really helpful to you. Your ruler is in the 12th. She's a little dissatisfied at this point in Virgo, maybe a little fussy. But that doesn't last long. And then you will have a lot of Venus coming forward because from August, she's in your first house, and basically through the end of the year, she's in your first and second house as she's going to be retrograding back into your house of self. So think of this in terms of July setting you up for this new way of showing up. And then as you go into the autumn, realizing, okay, there's a new way of being with people or a new people I need to be with, the new dynamic, my new preferences, my new values, all coming through all of that. And here with Venus in the 12th can have you recognize where you might be undermining yourself, where you might be doing things, or how you might be doing things that is working against you. If this is something to do with secrets or intimacy or even a spiritual relationship or spiritual awareness of something, then that will also be quite instructive and will be part of what is coming out in terms of how you want to go forward in life, in terms of your ambition, life ambition or marital ambition or whatever. Venus rules your eighth also of marriage and intimacy and everything, and that's where we find Chiron. So it's a big theme for you now. And it is a life theme. This is Libra, you cannot get away from the theme of relating to other people. It's what you're here for. You signed up for it, so that is what you're here for. Libra is all about finding harmony and balance in relationships. Let's say showing up in your own life, showing up in relationships. So that's certainly what this opportunity is bringing you here. I like that Jupiter in your 11th house. Jupiter is in its joy in the 11th house. You'll hear that if you go back to the Jupiter video that I did there. And the fact that it's triggered by Pluto is just saying, have you changed enough that you will access this new way of showing up or a bigger audience or something like that? I don't see this at all as difficult, especially because it's in a favorable dynamic. It's trinal to you and sextile to you through that. And so you're benefiting a lot as an air sign. You're benefiting a lot from the shifts that are happening. Not to say that they will be always what you want or expect to happen, but it will bring you benefit very much so over time. All right, good luck with that, Libra, and I'll see you in the next video. Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, you are having a really big shift that is in the more secret or hidden parts of your chart. Very much what makes you Scorpio in terms of the reflection, thinking, communication being mute in Scorpio's life. The fourth, eighth, and 12th houses are considered mute houses, and those are your communication houses. So anybody who knows Scorpio knows that they don't talk a lot about certain things unless they really want to. And your ruler is in the eighth house along with Uranus. So there's been something about intimacy, something about resources that you share with another, something about what is digging deep, maybe into your psyche or into your psychological state, how you're feeling about life, about yourself, that is really, really transforming at this time. And it's part of this configuration. Now, this is an ongoing story that you will have heard in different chunks, but the difference now is that Jupiter is in your 10th house and where it's going to be for a year, and it's opposing Pluto in your fourth house. So this really impacts you in terms of the like backbone of your life. Something to do with home or your lineage or family or your deeper sense of like spiritual, psychological, or emotional security, even literal physical security, job security. Saturn is in your sixth house of work, but also health and illness. and that's ruling your fourth house here. And then it's opposed by Jupiter. So there's something of an opportunity to show up differently. Maybe are you changing jobs? Are you changing this state of your career? Are you stepping back or are you stepping forward in terms of work? Are you retiring? Again, that's Neptune maybe going through the sixth house saying, I don't like the way that I do my everyday life. I need that to change. I want a more maybe idealized vision for what I do every day, that I want to feel more meaning in what I do every day. Beware of the Neptune in the sixth, which can, for a couple of reasons, can be masking the real reason you have any health issues, for example, or any work issues. Because what can happen is that we're not really seeing clearly what's going on in that house of obstacles. So you may not have a grip and totally understand what the obstacles are. And this is part of the Saturn journey for you now, is to really learn about that, how to manage those obstacles, how to manage the difficulties. Is it a health issue? Is it a work stuff? Is it like too much to do? Is it I don't like the way my life feels to me day by day? What are my responsibilities and obligations? I have to grapple with all of this right now. Is there a sense of disappointment in my life or even in my health at this point? Neptune in the sixth can also have you just take on way too much because you're not really assessing what is available to you. Like that depends on the nature of your natal Mars because Mars rules your sixth as well as your house of self. So if your Mars is a strong Mars, then that can be a lot easier. If it's not a strong Mars, then you might be more susceptible to burning out or just again piling it on and then regretting that and then getting angry about that, right? So, and Mars in your eighth house is, again, your ruler in the eighth house is showing you aspects of what you're having to overcome, maybe through major transformations that can feel like either it's coming at you like a crisis or something's happening through you psychologically or through marital partnership or through a client story, through money that's coming from a partner or some problem that's coming at you from a partner. Um, a new way of showing up because that's also Jupiter in the 10th. Jupiter is not Santa Claus. I've had this I've spoken about that before. I won't go into it, but Jupiter is not Santa Claus here to rain down nice things on you. Jupiter brings you what you need, and it's going to also do that in terms of your marital status, your what you're reaching out into. It'll bring you the right thing. So that needs to also align in terms of not only your capabilities, the sixth house, but also in terms of your sense of what you really get excited about and how you're seen to be doing those things, because that's Leo for you, very important for you. The sun, the ruler of your 10th, is in your ninth house. So there's a part of this story with the Mercury retrograding in the same place at the same time, which is ruling your Mars at this time in the eighth house, deep contemplation around why am I alive? Why do I get out of bed? What does anything matter to me right now? And what do I do about that? And so this is also Jupiter in your 10th house, trining back to Neptune in your sixth. The thing that I do needs to have purpose and meaning. I want a more meaningful life. I want a life that has some kind of a sense of fun or expansion or vision or whatever that is. And that's coming through this time. Now, Neptune is also in a sextile to Uranus from the 6th to the 8th. If there's anything to do with a health issue, then that can be something that gives you deep insight into that, awareness of that. If the health issue is lingering and it's confusing, try to understand it from a place of emotion and go into that Pluto fourth house and understand how your emotional relationship to life, potentially the pressure you put yourself under, or the feeling of not connecting with others, that's the Aquarius on the fourth house, the feeling of being distanced from others or not really fitting in or not being able to emotionally bond, is a part of the story of your health issue at this time. Saturn in your sixth house is ruling the fourth. Now, that may be true at any time, but it's especially so now with the Saturn from the sixth to the fourth. The moon is in the 12th, and that will bring you an awareness of more of this understanding too, that's coming from a spiritual lens or that's coming from a lens of what am I doing that I should stop doing, or what am I not doing that I should start doing, basically. And that's in a trine to your ruler, Mars, from the 12th and the eighth house there. So that can be really useful at this time to reflect on, your hidden family stories, family secrets, or psychological patterns, or things that you've inherited through the family that are not necessarily material things, could be, or things that are coming through childhood that you become more aware of as well, that you have to grapple with right now. That you will, because Uranus is going through there, it will completely reconfigure your relationship to your family and to your psychology and to all those different aspects of yourself that may initially have felt either completely confusing or way outside of your realm of awareness. But once Uranus is doing its job here, really helps you dig deep, especially with Pluto in a trine to Uranus from the fourth. You're really digging deep to understand deeper psychological stuff, and that is quite liberating with Uranus going through the eighth house. That's a beautiful path of deep self-understanding. So lots to work with there, Scorpio, and I will see you in the next video. Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, it's your ruler, Jupiter, that is triggering this configuration that's called the basket configuration from the ninth house of your sense of purpose. This is trinal to you. It's one of those wonderful so-called fortunate houses, lucky houses. The good fortune is especially going to come from a realization of what life means to you, what you're here for, how do you express yourself. It's in a trine here to Neptune, and this is, of course, by sign, trining your sign. If you have anything at 0 to like 8 degrees or 7, 8 degrees of your sign, this will be very, very strong. And you can hear the Jupiter in Leo video that I already posted. I did two of them, one in a general sense, more philosophical, and the other one in the sign by sign sense. So you can hear more about that because it's your ruler. So quite important, this big shift now. And it's triggering this lovely boat configuration that we see here, where by opposition to Pluto, there's going to be something here about how you communicate, how you think about things, what you believe in, digging into what is true with Pluto in the third house, becoming much more clear about what is truth versus what is a nice, convenient belief or idea around things. Um, you are one of the signs that can have this happy-go-lucky kind of way of living, and that especially is because Gemini there on the seventh house is kind of like Holly go lightly, it's like, yeah, it's all good, all great, all fun. And so with Uranus going through there, there's going to be a need for you also to transform that, to change that, possibly changing relationships, maybe in the direction of more freedom, which is what you're always looking for, or more space, more openness in relationship. But one thing that you could say is in all of that is being more authentic in relationship, and that would require this by trying here back to Pluto in your third house, being true, being honest with yourself, being truthful in relationship, being profoundly, deeply living through truth with a capital T in all the different ways that you show up. Neptune is in your fifth house, so there can be some kind of confusion in the way you show up, or there can be a feeling of where am I, like showing up in a way that feels inauthentic, or there's like a kind of I'm putting on an act, meaning it's not necessarily a negative thing, but it's kind of like if people are saying, how you doing? You're saying everything's fine, when really it's not. And again, there's certain people that don't deserve your explanation of what your life is going through, but there are some people who really should know how you're really doing. Or at the very least, if you're hoping to find some support through all of that, then you need to say, actually, I've had a hard day or I've had a hard moment and I need some help. And this would be where this configuration here in the trine with Pluto Uranus, and then in the bisextile or this mini grand trine, minor grand trine, etc. Boat configuration is really saying what's true for you now, like really what is the truth that you're absorbing and living through. And I mean, Sag, that's kind of your vibe, right? That's your thing. That's why you're here, to understand the truth, to fight for the truth, to be that warrior of what is true and righteous. And especially when your ruler is in the ninth house, it really doesn't get much better than this. And so there's a lot that you can work with here. With Jupiter in your ninth and then in a sextile to Uranus in the seventh, there may be a new person coming through. If you've been in a marital relationship or a marriage type relationship. This may be a relationship that comes around through a second relationship that feels much more powerful and meaningful for you. Um, Mercury rules your house of relationship, and there's something here in terms of intimacy and how you bond, how you connect, how you overcome psychological experiences or fears or family trauma or family issues. And that's being it's retrograding until the 23rd, and then it goes out into meet Jupiter in your ninth house around the 9th, 10th of August. And then at the moment of this basket formation, it's being ruled by the moon in Libra in your 11th house of the future. How you connect forward in time, how you reach out into the future, how you reach out into groups and friendships, like acquaintance type friendships. But there's something here that is about the intimacy in both types of relationships, like all the different ways that you relate, either one-on-one or even with business partners or life partners or clients. And also, because of that tie-in with the moon ruling Mercury back here and then Venus ruling the moon from your 10th house, it can be about, like, am I being honest in my marriage? Am I being honest in my career, in my job? Where am I feeling disappointment in all of that? So Neptune retrogrades from the 7th of July for about 4.5 months. It's a long retrograde cycle every year. And that retrograde cycle from this point on is also an opportunity to re-examine how things have been since February, basically. And if you go back into the period of February, March, you you were questioning maybe how you should show up, how you feel about yourself. Do I allow myself to go in this direction? Do I allow myself to go over here? Because especially with Saturn there, as part of this dynamic, there's a feeling of heaviness or seriousness or needing to make something lasting of this particular moment or of this particular way of showing up. And you can absolutely make something lasting, especially if it's a business, some kind of you're developing a new club or you're making a new organization or you're making a business, you're going to start an entrepreneurial, or thing, maybe with a new partner. All of this is very possible for you right now, and this would be one of the things to really sit down and have a visual of it, have a sense. This is coming with the feeling of why I'm here because of that Jupiter and the, trinal to you in the ninth house, and creating this sense of, yeah, this is it. And again, it will require you to go through this phase of July, August to get to the answer. And then Jupiter, your ruler, will be trining Saturn from the 9th to the 5th at the end of August. And that will be the first element of an answer around this question. But there's all the different other elements are already here for you now that you can really work through. Showing up in a different way with other people, showing up in a more authentic way with people who may be completely different to who I related to in the past, to whom, and also with a sense that maybe I have been overlooking certain types of people because they didn't feel familiar, but I need to give them a chance now, especially with this Neptune Saturn in your fifth house, recognizing different ways of loving that are more lasting. All right, I'm going to leave it there, Saj, but good luck with all of that, and I will see you in the next video. Capricorn, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, your ruler is in your fourth house again for already over a year now. So it's part of a bigger theme for you that it's part of this configuration where Neptune in the fourth is being trined now by Jupiter in your eighth house. So there's something here that may be psycho-emotional. There's something that's coming through maybe your family, maybe your connection to your lineage, especially since your ruler is there in the fourth. Something that's coming through maybe a fear around loss, a fear. This could be part of the story of examining mortality for you, examining the bigger story of life, a bigger picture of life. Jupiter in the eighth house can have you really expand into what the deeper meaning of life is all about, deeper sense of the occult or of hidden mysteries, like understanding the knife's edge of life and crisis and what that can bring to you, how it can bring you closer to yourself. I did a whole video with Jupiter there, so you can learn more about that, but I'm talking here in terms of the configuration of the basket. And then Jupiter is not only trining that Neptune, so pulling in these themes of things that are actually going on beneath the surface for you, either psychologically or emotionally, or in your marital, like secret kind of nest dynamics. But also in terms of family and money, big change around family, money, resources, what's available to you, what you feel is available through you in terms of a resource. And there's going to be a huge focus on these things right now. So this is the bigger theme, let's say, of July for you. It can be a bigger theme as long as Jupiter is there for the next year, but especially right now in July, and to a limited extent in August as well, with reference to that. But that's also where we find the nodal axis moving. So this continues the theme for another 18 months beyond that. So the whole story of money, other people's money, inheritance, insurance, money that you owe, money that you will receive, and the balance of acquiring, accumulating, how your relationship to money will change. And that will probably be because your daily life is also going to be radically changing. This can be through a change of job. There's a trine here that started in 2025, as you saw, a trine from Uranus back to Pluto from your house of work, everyday work, health, habits, the structure of your day. The sixth house is very important because it's like everything that happens in the sixth house is setting you up for success or failure in your life, because it supports you through the minor, what seems sometimes to be little details. But those little details, like how you eat your meals or how you nourish yourself or how you exercise or how you set up your work. Is there stress? Like I would, for you, Capricorn, I would really look into your relationship to stress, your relationship to too much, your relationship to overworking, overcommitting. I would look at all of those things, or if it's in the dynamic of relating to another person, same thing. And look at those things right now, because that can also come with a need to repair your health around these things as well. Um, So you also have your ruler in opposition to the moon at this time, from your fourth house to the 10th house. And it's the moon in your 10th house that's ruling Mercury in your seventh house. And there's a reconsideration going on in terms of relationships of all kinds, in terms of how you're relating to other people or to whom you relate, things that may need to be reassessed or spoken about for you. And you're realizing this based on your role, your status. This can be your role as a parent, or your role for your parents, or because of your parents, or the social identity. This can be about your father. Venus is in the house of father, or father figures, or teacher, religious figures, counselors, guides, etc. Venus is there ruling the 10th from the 9th. And then, of course, that moon is in an opposition to Saturn and squaring Mercury, which is ruling your sixth house and ruling that Venus. So there's a lot going on in terms of this bigger vision. I mean, we are all in this bigger vision for life, but in your case, it ties into a sense of responsibility. Who plays what role in my life? What is the role that I'm playing now? How is that changing? There's something about your everyday responsibilities that is changing, and probably already at the beginning of July, you recognize that, whatever that was for you, because we had the Mars-Uranus conjunction, which is still pretty much intact around the time of this basket, just simply about a 10-degree orb here, a little bit more. And that is ongoing, but initially in July there was a square to the north node. So there's this stark realization of your role, your literal everyday role. Are you playing now the role of matriarch or patriarch, where there's no more generational, there's no generation above you now, you are it? Or is it more that now you need to be there for your parents, and you're in the sandwich generation where you've got kids on one side and parents on the other side? Are you needing to take on a new role at work? Is your work precarious right now and you're ready to reconsider how you work? Again, retiring, literally, maybe part of the story for some of you. Is this about marriage? And you're like, it's not worth it. I'm paying too high a price, or I need to invest more and therefore nourish my marriage. What is the story here? It'll be something along those lines. But your mental and physical health can be part of this story. That your choices, your everyday choices, will be contributing to your well-being and your health, or detracting from it. Notice that. All right, I will leave it there, Capricorn. I will come back again and again to talk about these things, and I wish you all the best. So for Aquarius, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, of course, now your Pluto is being opposed by Jupiter in the seventh. So there's something of an opportunity here, through a certain amount of tension. There can be a realization or a particular even person coming into your life, or at least a realization around your relationship quality that really wakes you up to what you want in your own life, how you behave, or how you need to step up or step back, how you need to, lay down your arms or pick up arms in relationship, because there's going to be some test of wills or some awareness. The opposition is like the full moon phase. It's like an awareness of something that is about you and how you've been transforming, or how you might not be letting go of control, and you're going to be shown what is happening as a result of you not letting go of control, potentially. Jupiter rules your second house of family, money, um, your resources, your income, your food, um, how you nourish yourself, how you think about yourself, your values. So some of what this will represent is going to mirror back to you your own sense of security around those things, and all, even your value. And Jupiter rules your house of the future as well. So there's something here at this moment that can trigger a sense of what this will be going forward, how this future will unfold because of this other person, or because of the dynamic of how I'm relating. This could be a business story. This could be something of a like a colleague type issue, or a relationship around business partnership, or even a client relationship, expanding clientele, finding ways to do that. That could be one way of working through here. I mean, it's Jupiter, so it's going to bring you something generally is positive. It may not be what you want. This is the difference, right? It's the thing that it will bring you real benefit with Jupiter in the seventh. It'll bring you the right people, and you just have to be open to it, recognizing that what you think you want is not always in your best interest. But Jupiter will really help you see that, and give you opportunities as well, new opportunities to connect and relate with people. Now, we find Saturn, your ruler, in the third house of communication, what you know, the knowledge and wisdom that you have to bring to the table in a practical way, showing people how to do stuff, explaining things, teaching things, practical skills. It's all part of that. And Neptune is there, so there's a lot of creativity around there. But with Neptune in the third, there can be a lot of confusion around relationship now, especially so because it's in a trine to Jupiter. So one of the things that you'll want to be careful of, as there's a Neptune sextile to Pluto and a trine to Jupiter in your seventh, is that you are on the same page with the person you're speaking to. And especially because on the 26th of July, your ruler Saturn is actually going to retrograde. So there's going to be something that needs a resolution or a reflection or reconsideration around these topics of communications of all kinds. Or is it that you're trying to establish a business or connect with clients and you don't know how to communicate your message? That's okay, because the retrograde phase will help you define that. It'll help you find the message, basically. Um, and the Neptune going through the third, in a general sense, especially because it's a long-term trigger with Pluto in your first, Neptune in your third, and then Uranus in your fifth house of self-expression. So your self changing, your communication requiring clarification, and maybe a sense of a vision, more visionary than maybe you've been used to. And then, of course, Uranus changing how you show up and how you express all of that. There's a need for you to be in integrity around communication, because Neptune can also be deceptive. It can be either people not being honest with you, not being truthful with you, but also, are you truthful with other people? And of course, with reference to Aries, are you being truthful and honest with yourself? Are you saying things that you can back up and you're like, yeah, this is me being 100% in. I'm all in on that. Yes, I'm all in on that. No. But also in the third house could be about siblings and friends and connections around your neighborhood. Your artistic skill also can be part of this kind of like waking up to this great skill that you had that you didn't think was very important, and now you see it can be really helpful or really helpful in terms of making money, even, or starting a business proposal or starting a connection with other people, relating through that. Because Jupiter from your seventh rules your 11th house of the future, but also the audience. And Uranus, your modern ruler, is in the fifth house of your performance. How you show up is the like performance. And then all the creative stuff comes through second and third house of your skill and your talents and gifts and things that you bring to the table and how you reach out into that. So you could be really establishing something here with another or for another or through yourself for others in a general way that can actually be quite lucrative. It can be something really, really helpful. So notice what's coming up in July in terms of who's sitting across the table from you. Can you be more in integrity in relationships? Um, can you be, again, in alignment with who you need to be in relationships? And can you be open to new people, a new quality of person, or recognizing that that's something that needs to be adjusted in relationships? The moon is in your ninth house, giving you an awareness of your vision, and it's squaring Mercury, which it rules, in your sixth house. And Mercury in the sixth house, whether it's health, illness, or day-to-day stuff and work and so on, is revising over the month of July, basically. What am I doing every day? How do I use my time every day? How do I use my energy? How do I work? Do I like my work? Do I like what I do? Um, and so this is part of the Mercury retrograde phase, but that's also squaring your traditional ruler Saturn. So there's an opposition from Saturn to the moon and then squaring this Mercury. So reflecting on all these things that can briefly, but it's symbolic of this particular configuration, have you feeling a bit isolated. But the isolation can be a really good opportunity for you to really check in, because a lot of what's changing here is in your change, your new relationship with you. And then that's how other people will receive you. That's how you will reach out into other people. So there's maybe a whole new way of recognizing how you need to relate to yourself in a different way. That would include your treatment of your body, speech, and mind in terms of health, right? Am I taking care of myself? Would be the question. There may be something around family or siblings, your obligations around extended family or siblings that may come up. And if maybe even with reference to children, there may be something that is changing your everyday because of siblings or children or pals, friends around you. And Venus is in your house of other people's money, ruled by Mercury in your sixth house of work. The eighth house is also the reference to marriage, intimacy, psychological things, trauma, secrets, inherited patterns from the family. And Venus rules your fourth house where now Chiron sits, as well as that ninth house where the moon is. So there's something here that may require you to really look deeper and in a broader picture in terms of where you get to this place of being able to fully express yourself and being in a place of balance or maybe better positioning with others in general in relationship and taking the benefit of that Jupiter, really looking out for people who are taking up a lot of space, because with Aquarius, often the insecurity around your identity can be a big trigger, and then you tend to maybe glorify or put others on a pedestal that allows you to kind of fade into the background. Now, that may be okay for some of you, and you're actually genuinely okay with that as a way of working or a way of supporting a spouse or something. But if it's not, and if there's any resentment around that, then take that to heart and act on all of these things that I'm saying here. And that's part of this bigger configuration in time. All right, Aquarius, I will see you in the next video, and bye for now. Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, it's your ruler, Jupiter, that is in your sixth house of your work, your everyday life, your health or obstacles to health and the way that you operate every day, how you show up in terms of like habits and things like that. And it's in opposition to Pluto in your 12th house. So Pluto in the 12th has been there quite some time, changing your relationship to what feels maybe foreign, far away, hidden from you, masked from you, unconscious even, what comes through dreams or psychological awareness and even your spiritual life and a transformation around that. Maybe in the last 3 years, there's been some big changes around that. And now Jupiter in the sixth is going to be pushing against that or opposing in some way based on what you want out of your work. How does work feel to you? You know, it's like saying you going into the sixth house. How can I show up in a way that feels meaningful to me? How can I show up in a way that feels seen? Because that's also the Pisces story to be identified as being helpful, to be identified as being sacrificial. That's the Leo sixth house. Pisces is seen in that role of taking responsibility for other people's shit, basically. That's the Leo in the sixth house for Pisces. And so there we have Jupiter. So this would be a good thing to be aware of. Am I taking on too much stuff that's not mine to take on? Um, This is part of a bigger reconfiguration because Jupiter is also in a trine to Neptune, where there may be a big shift in terms of your awareness of your self-worth, the value that you bring. And if you've listened to the annual forecast that I did, you'll know that I was saying in that this is a year where Pisces becomes much more of the energy that everybody starts to feel more comfortable and familiar with, that everybody's kind of looking for is this energy of Pisces and of being different, showing up differently, spiritualizing life and living in that way. And here, what we find with the Neptune in trine to Jupiter is that you can find that your value is boosted in such a way, but you're also so it's inspiring in a way. And that can be where your income comes through. You're inspired to work this way, earn money this way, relate to your values in this way. But here with the retrograde, you're going to have to go back over the last few months from February until this point in the next 4 months, where you look back over this journey of Neptune so far. And because the retrograde is just showing you, okay, there's some things about money, or there's some things about your value, or maybe even things about your family or what supports you that needs some reconsideration reconfiguration. And Jupiter from in the trine to that is about saying so that you can have capacity through your work, or that you can do more work, or that you can feel better in your health, or that you can feel better in a general sense based on this dynamic that can be pushing from the unconscious side where Pluto is, where you recognize that there are patterns of behavior, ways of showing up that are your undoing, that are deep psychological things, inherited patterns or patterns coming through the lineage, coming through ancestors. Um, and Jupiter's highlighting that, and something needs to change. Now, it's beneficial to you, except that the sixth house is actually in aversion to Pisces. It's not seen. It's a quincunx or an inconjunct. It's called in aversion because there's no clear line of shot. You kind of have to turn your head to see it. It's like I'm not looking straight at it. I'm not looking this way. It's like kind of there, but it's not really in my line of vision. And that's that Jupiter. So it's going to be things that keep coming at you in ways that are like, oh, this feels like it's so normal and every day, but it's very consequential. So it may be things that are not really in your direct awareness, but it's impacting on your values, it's impacting on your money, it's impacting on your health, it's impacting on your work. And then also we have Uranus, which of course is trining, long extended trine from your fourth house of home and family, your lineage, your roots, your mother, your literal place of residence where you live, the quality of home and property, anything to do with those things that feel stable. And all of it is a part of a bigger change. And so you're coming back to a place of feeling more authentic in your emotional skin, let's say, in your slippers, because the fourth house is like where you go home and you go to be by yourself. So you're getting into this role of feeling more authentic in your inner experience of self, which is the Uranian sort of real radical individuation. And then also this feeling of insight and awareness that's coming through the impact of your family, your childhood, the family that you've established, or your role in all of that, as well as your lineage and even your homeland. and coming through even ancestral stuff, which is part of this ongoing trine for you that picks up on these what are called mute houses, these houses that are kind of there in our awareness. It's like psychological or unconscious, and it's there, but it's kind of driving from behind without our total awareness. So here, there can be something that really comes starkly into your awareness, and it's picking up on the Jupiter by sextile from the fourth house, and this awareness of what you require in terms of feeling more yourself or feeling more stable, which could be quite literal, even in terms of property. The sixth house is like rental contracts and agreements, and the fourth house can be your home, or the sixth house can be like where you establish a mortgage, for example. That can be part of it, or it can be, more of a metaphorical home, and how you're coming to an awareness of all of that stuff that is going to be how you're changing the relationship to your foundation in life, what grounds you. Is this a changing relationship because of changes in the pattern of family? We see that here in the second house, Neptune, Saturn, changing the dynamic in family. You may be feeling far away from family, or you may be feeling unsupported by family, or you may be feeling loss around family. And again, we come back to the Pluto in the 12th. And here there's a Saturn opposition from the moon in the 8th house. And it's the moon that's ruling the 5th house, your expression, your love, your creative expression, your children. And there it's creating a T square with Saturn at the time of this basket. So there's something here that can be quite profound. It can be emotional. It can be something to do with another, or what you're maybe more aware of a distance or a feeling of isolation, or you're more aware of how you need to communicate or how you need to show up in a different way. Or again, coming through things where you're reconsidering how you are manifesting yourself, how you love, how you express your love. And Venus is ruling that 8th house from the 7th house of relationship, and it's Mercury from your 5th house that's ruling Venus. And so we see this big tie-in in these houses of relationship, 7, 5, 7, 8. It's about your connection with other people, whether they be friends, children, lovers, spouses, that is feeding into this. Now, Jupiter is not only your ruler, but it rules your career sector, your social status, your marital status as well. And so this can also be where some of the changes coming through, and that is impacting how you show up out in the world, or how your ambitions are changing, in terms of your social ambitions or your worldly ambitions, or the way you want to be perceived, or the legacy you want to leave. And it's kind of like you're feeling like, now, again, get down to business. This is Jupiter getting busy in the 6th house of work. So lots of inspiration to work with, lots of things that you can realize, many of which I think in many cases people will not necessarily be even aware of. It's going to be really under the radar in many cases for many Pisces, depending on your natal chart, because of the fact that so much of it is coming through your deeper way of relating to life, or your more pragmatic, everyday kind of experience of life. And yeah, all reconfiguring you for the better. And of course, just one last thing, that Mars-Uranus was squaring the nodal axis, as I mentioned in previous videos, from your 4th house. So this can be that there, in the beginning of July, there was this big change, a deep awareness of something that needed to change, or that was around this foundation of your life. And again, it can be literal around where you live, or around your lineage, around your home, your family, your mother, your um, your emotional or psychological foundation as well, something changing, and that is allowing you to take advantage of this bigger shift overall, because that's part of this configuration very strongly. And you have, at this point in the Barbault basket, you have 1 week left of the North Node in your 1st house. So this is really kind of like an insight saying, okay, this is what that whole thing meant, and this is how I need to be more of me, more of myself. And then the North Node goes into the 12th and 6th, and I will talk about that in another video. Thanks for listening, Pisces. I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.